By the way, it's okay. This is a judgment-free environment. You can share anything you want. But what I want to kind of get to is preparing you for what the next couple hours can be like if you choose for them to be like this for you. So my goal for all of you is you're actually going to leave with an action plan. You're going to leave with that on, and then build a plan around that. Does that work? Any questions before we get started? I don't have really any rules at all, yet I'm going to give us just one. Is that okay? I'm not a big fan of rules. The one rule is I just ask you to keep what somebody else may say in this room. Is that fair?
Yes.
How many of you are with KW? Any guests? This is not a giant recruiting event, I promise. However, ask any questions you have. The downside of being with KW for so long, I joined Keller Williams on December 10th of 2010. Why do I remember that date?
Oh, December?
Sorry, it's pretty close. It was my 30th birthday. So I spent my 30th birthday joining KW. So you can just do the math, I'm 41. So joined it on my 30th birthday after being with several companies before that and landed on KW. And it was one of those experiences that I said I'd never join the company. They were kind enough to bring me to Mega Camp, which is our big event happening in like 4 or 5 weeks from now in Austin. And the way they got me to go to the event is they said, hey, Tim, your friend Andrea from this company is going to be going, and your friend Noah from this company is going to be going. You should go too. Okay? I don't know what I signed up for. What do you think they told Andrea and Noah? Hey, your friend Tim and your friend Andy, like they played that game so brilliant. So I get on the plane and I'm sitting next to my friend Andrea and I'm getting to meet people. We get off the plane and they said, hey, hop in a cab with us. We're going to take you to your condo. How many of you have been to Austin, Texas? How many of you have been to 6th Street on Austin, Texas? Like Dirty 6 on Austin, Texas? Yeah, you don't really want to raise it that high. How many of you have been to Bourbon Street? Okay. What do they have in common?
Jumping.
Yeah, loud. So we roll up to this place on 6th Street. It's like 8 o'clock at night, and they said, here's where you're staying. Here's where I'm staying. Like, you don't know me that well, but I promise you I'm not staying in the bar the entire time. And I had to wait in line for this bar to then go turn right and go up to a condo that was right above it. And that's where they had me. What's the downside of staying above a bar?
I second that.
No sleep.
No sleep. And due to the bass going and going and going until 3 a.m. apparently that bar had their bass going too, because they close at 2, but then the workers need to clean up and they like the music to keep going. So by 3 a.m. I finally fell asleep. I got up at 6. I went to this event. I waited outside because everybody said you got to get there early. I had no idea what I was going to experience. Here's the reality check. I decided that night I wanted to stay in a hotel. One problem. I was the #1 agent at my company at the time. I couldn't afford to stay in a hotel. Didn't have it. How does that feel? I was worried that if I swiped my credit card, I didn't know what was going to happen. Getting married 6 months after that. Uh-oh. Does that come with more or less expenses? I don't care what side of the equation you're on, it comes with more expenses. More expenses coming, and I'm figuring out, oh no, what do I do? So it was a humbling moment, to be totally honest, and I've heard other versions of that story from friends I have that are top producers at our company that they had to share hotel rooms, they had to figure out other things. It's okay wherever you are. So I just want to kind of make that clear. I didn't come from any money at all. My parents are still very much a part of my life. They got married when they were 17 and 20. And they're somehow still married today. Because they're stupid. No, because they're wonderful. And as a result, when you get married at 17 and 20 and you have a kid when you're 21 and 18, and then you have 2 more a couple years later, what did they miss? Like the higher education. Like my mom dropped out of high school and got her GED. She got married. Oh, you did. And then they moved forward. So what did they instilled in me was a lot of really great things. I'm going to be honest, and I know we're recording this, and I hope they're not watching, but that's okay anyway. They also instilled some bad habits too. Like just work as hard as you can. Now, how is that a strength that can be really overused? Just work as hard as you can.
Burnout.
Boundaries. I got my real estate license right out of college. I literally was that person that drove by a sign that said, get your license, call here. Got my license in Pennsylvania. I'm still licensed today, this many years later. So I got my license in 04, if the math is right there. been licensed a long time. I remember hearing about agents that have been licensed for like 15, 20 years. I thought they were old.
Is it ringing?
It happened. And when I drove by the sign and I got my license really quickly, I wanted to move fast. I didn't know anybody in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, because I grew up in New Jersey. Problem is, when I went away to college, my parents moved. Should that have been a sign? No, my dad relocated for a job to Lancaster, so I lived there for a really short period of time, drove by, got my license, packed up and moved to Philadelphia. Didn't know anybody. Built a real estate business. Failed forward. Started with Paul Baker, failed forward, joined Long and Foster, failed forward again, and then, as I mentioned, joined KW as an agent on December 10th of 2010. 6 months later, I became team leader in that market center, which is our version of manager, broker, kind of interchangeable, for those of you that are guests. Interesting part of that journey, I was in that location for 18 months before I was fired. When I was fired, it was the week of Christmas, and my wife was expecting our first. Okay, how's this feeling so far?
Familiar.
Yeah, feeling inspired.
Not what I was expecting.
No, not at all. Why are we going on this path?
Because it's your story. It's real.
Yeah, well, the only reason number one, I am really uncomfortable sharing my own story, if you can't tell. I mean, Michelle making an introduction, I'm glad she kept it short. I don't like that part of it, but I want you to hear it because I think you're gonna hear pieces of your own story in there somewhere. You don't need to raise your hand, but I was a real estate agent for a while. I remember the credit card swipe. I already mentioned one example. There were plenty of other examples when I could swipe it and I didn't care what the expense was. I knew it was going through. There were other months, I didn't care what the expense was. I knew it wasn't going through. It was gonna be a real problem. And it was gonna be a roller coaster ride of up and down. Now, I shared I was fired. I was fired because I went on vacation, full disclosure. And theoretically for non-performance. We finished number 18 in the country that year for growth. And I was literally fired the week of Christmas. It was really fun. And it was one of the best gifts I ever got. It forced me to figure it out faster. I was making a little bit of money, not much. We were barely surviving. We lived in a 400 square foot apartment in Philadelphia. And my OP at the time, the investor, he said, "How come you're living in an apartment?" I said, "Because I take home $1,000 a week. I can't afford to live in the city that I serve." Now, what was amazing is when I was fired, I was hired very quickly before anybody even realized it in another location. And that actually set me off on a pretty good trajectory. So the question that a coach asked me a long time ago is reframing to why is this happening to me to why is this happening for me? I would love to say that those moments, the week leading up to Christmas, were like wonderful, great opportunities, can't wait. What do you think they really were? That's when I went to live above the park. They weren't ideal. It was, I don't know what's next. Now, it took me a couple of years and months to really get past that and realize what a great gift it was. So has there been a time in which you've gone through something similar? Where it sucked at that moment? And then you looked at it and like, what did you learn on the other side of that? And it sucked. Yeah, and it still, by the way, it still wasn't fun. I have a really good friend that's a fellow coach that I'll leave his name out of it, but he's on trajectory this year to earn $1.5 million net income. We were team leaders at the same time in the same region. Now as a coach and building a business owner, 1.5, 1.6 million this year he'll earn. We were both fired by the same OP. What does that tell you?
That OP is not smart.
Well, and yes, and I think it's about match. And are you in the right relationships? And to be honest, I wasn't the right relationship for him either. I wasn't making his life any better, and he wasn't making mine any better either. So I realized probably not what you're expecting. How many of you have been through the 6 personal perspectives before? Even if you have, this is a version you probably never heard before. I can pretty much promise you that. So we're going to start with some questions that Gary Keller asks himself on a monthly basis. These are not your materials. If you have materials, we'll roughly use them. We'll kind of go in and out of them. Don't worry if you don't have a copy, you can share with the person next to you. I would encourage you to have some place to take notes and write some things down. You're going to need to write some things down today. Good? All right, any other questions before we get started? That was a long intro. There'll be more. Okay. We're going to start with the questions. These are not in your materials. So Gary Keller, for those of you that don't know, is the co-founder of Keller Williams. He's the Keller in Keller Williams, if you didn't get that part already by his last name. And every month he asks himself these questions. First one, there's 10 of them. Who are you? Who are you? Lewis got to hear these last November, so he's getting to hear them again. Number 2, what do you believe to be true in this world? What do you believe to be true in this world? Number 3, what motivates you? I made an addition for my version. What motivates you right now? Number 4, when is enough enough for you? Why is that question important? You like the abuse? Yeah, Gary shared with us back in April that he had a friend or a friend of his family's that sold a company and made $30 million. In the bank, put $30 million. And the comment that this young guy made to Gary was, I thought it would feel like more.
Wow.
Now, what a nice problem to have, and yet the reality check was he didn't know when enough was enough for him. That's a big question. When is enough enough for you? So we got to ask Gary questions. Gary gave us these questions, literally, on a Zoom call. And somebody that was braver than I guess, at the time, said, hey, all right, Gary, what gives? You're holding a coffee mug that says never settle. And you're telling us when is enough enough for you? And Gary's quite insightful. He's also very direct. This is one of those times he went slower, and he just simply said, let me explain it. For me, enough is enough for things that are finite or things that don't matter that much. For him, business and money, there's a finite amount. His rookie year in real estate, he was runner-up to Rookie of the Year. Why? Why wasn't he first? You'd think this genius billionaire would be first. Any idea why Gary didn't finish first for his company?
That wasn't his goal.
He hit his goal and he stopped. He took off the month of December. He hit his goal. So he had clearly defined when enough was enough. So I wonder for us, when is enough? What's that look like? All right, question 5. Why do you work so hard? Okay, back to question 4 for a second. And then Gary said for some things in his world, like time with his granddaughter, there's never enough. So that's the counterbalance. All right, question 5. Why do you work so hard? I heard Gary say at one point that hard work is cheating. And then he tied it with long hours is actually cheating. Hard work and long hours is cheating. Now, he cleaned it up a little bit by the long hours part. Because it's not about not working hard, but it's about not working hard for an extended period of time. What does he mean by working long hours is cheating?
Talking about like the drive you have, I mean, you could spend 18 hours, but you're not effective in what you're doing.
Okay, that's a part of it. Cheating what, I heard you say? Also true. He said that the reason it's cheating is it rewards any behavior or any activity. You can do the wrong thing long enough and actually get some results. I mean, I could give you my address right now and you could probably plug it into a GPS and get to my house. If you didn't use a GPS, and I live in Pennsylvania, about 45 minutes away, and I told you the town, if you wandered around long enough in the town I lived in, eventually you'd come across my house. Can we all agree on that?
Yes.
Which one's more effective?
GPS.
All right, so then we're back to the GPS and back to a plan. We're actually going to talk about GPS today as well. So why do you work so hard? Number 6, what do you seek control over? What do you seek control over? If you just thought everything, I'm not a professional that can prescribe what you need. Everything is not the right answer then, by the way. I'm not going to give you answers to the other ones, but everything is not the right answer. What do you seek control over? I'm positive. Number 7, what do you fear when the lights are out?
Appraisers.
Sometimes. What do you fear when the lights are out? Number 8. What regrets are you trying to avoid? What regrets are you trying to avoid? I did write another version of that question for myself, and it was, whose regrets am I trying to avoid? Again, I've got some really good programming, and I've got some really bad programming happening in my head at the same time. Michelle mentioned I'm a coach. I get to be a head coach, which means I get to coach coaches, which is kind of cool. I also have 2 coaches in my world. They coach me. I need it. I'm a hot mess at times. I just need structure and people to keep me accountable to what I say I'm going to do. So actually, as a coach, I'm on a call being coached on Mondays. I'm on 2 calls being coached on, 2 calls on Mondays, 2 calls on Wednesdays. I get so much coaching in my world, it's amazing. And then we get a monthly call with Gary Keller as well, which is pretty cool. At least a monthly call. All right, so number 8, what regrets are you trying to avoid? Number 9, how do you bring meaning to your life? How do you bring meaning to your life? And then number 10, it's going to sound similar. What makes your life meaningful? What makes your life meaningful? All right, pull out your phones. Or whatever you use for a calendar. But let's be honest, you'll use your phones. Here's what you do. Pick 30 minutes in the next 7 days. Pick a 30-minute time block in the next 7 days. Find it. For that person that just thought, I don't have 30 minutes in the next 7 days, cancel something. Find 30 minutes. Now look back at that list where you took down those 10 questions, and I'm just going to ask you to use that 30-minute block to answer one, or start the journey to answer one of those 10 questions. I didn't ask this because I probably know the answer, yet I'll ask it now. Anyone able to just run through all 10 of those right now, and you've got just a quick answer for each one? Yeah, me neither. All right, Gary does it every single month. He's got a quick answer for each one of those. That's it. He's got a head start. So thank you for bringing that up. I need to be reminded of that sometimes too. I was comparing myself to Gary at some point. I know that sounds egotistical. It wasn't. It was like, well, look at what Gary's doing. And I had a coach stop me and say, listen, he's got a 40-year head start on you. He's been doing this 40 years longer than you've been doing it. Give yourself grace. And not quite 40, but you get the point. Okay, so did you pick your question? Which one are you going to focus on? Start at the top? Okay, cool. There's no wrong answer here. Anybody else? Different question you're going to focus on? Sharing it makes it real. Yeah, Matt.
Makes your life meaningful.
What makes your life meaningful? Cool. I think you're going to find, depending on where you are in your own stage of life, you may go to a different question naturally. But they're not in order of importance. They're just in the order that Gary gave them to us. So pick one. Time block the time to answer that first question. All right. Initial thoughts before we jump into the materials. Yeah.
I like that question, what do you believe to be true in this world? Because I find that we perceive things through filters, biases, prejudices, etc. And a lot of times it's just uncovering a lie that we've been believing and not even realizing we're believing a lie. Like, for instance, some of us could read that title and immediately have a perception of a millionaire or some negative experiences or some feelings of inadequacy regarding that one word. And we write off the whole seminar because of some maybe religious upbringing or cultural upbringing regarding that one word, million. You know?
Yeah, it has a feeling around it. Yeah. The reality is I could call this class Billionaire Mindset, because these are Gary's things. How much bigger is a billion than a million? How many times bigger? 1,000 times bigger. So by default, Gary thinks 1,000 times bigger than a millionaire. Yeah, so how many of you have read the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book? The red one. Anyone read it 1,000 times? Okay.
Yeah.
I coach a coach, and he said he finished his 32nd lap on the book. He just finished the 32nd time on that book. He's got a long ways to go to 1,000 to kind of get it. Okay, good so far? We're gonna watch a short video. And this is where we're really gonna jump into some of the materials. The video's about 4 minutes or so. I'm gonna ask you to write down what you're hearing in this video that jumps out to you.
So imagine a big explosion as you climb through 3,000 feet. Imagine a plane full of smoke. Imagine an engine going clack, 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 clack. Sounds scary. Well, I had a unique seat that day. I was sitting in 1D. I was the only one who could talk to the flight attendants. So I looked at them right away, and they said, no problem. We probably hit some birds. The pilot had already turned the plane around, and we weren't that far. You could see Manhattan. 2 minutes later, 3 things happened at the same time. The pilot lines up the plane with the Hudson River. It's usually not the route. He turns off the engines. Now imagine being on a plane with no sound. And then he says 3 words, as unemotional 3 words I've ever heard. He says, brace for impact. I didn't have to talk to the flight attendant anymore. I could see in her eyes, it was terror. Life was over. And I want to share with you 3 things I learned about myself that day. I learned that it all changes in an instant. We have this bucket list, we have these things we want to do in life. And I thought about all the people I wanted to reach out that I didn't. All the fences I wanted to mend. All the experiences I wanted to have and I never did. As I thought about that, later on I came up with a saying, which is, I collect bad wines. Because if the wine is ready and the person is there, I'm opening it. I no longer want to postpone anything in life. And that urgency, that purpose has really changed my life. The second thing I learned that day, and this is as we clear the George Washington Bridge, which was by not a lot. I thought about, wow, I really feel one real regret. I've lived a good life. In my own humanity and mistakes, I've tried to get better at everything I tried. But in my humanity, I also allow my ego to get in. And I regretted the time I wasted in things that did not matter with people that matter. And I thought about my relationship with my wife, with my friends, with people. And after, as I reflected on that, I decided to eliminate negative energy from my life. It's not perfect, it's a lot better. I've not had a fight with my wife in 2 years, it feels great. I'm no longer trying to be right. I choose to be happy. The third thing I learned, and this is as your mental clock starts going 15, 14, 13, you can see the water coming, I'm saying, please blow up. Right? I don't want this thing to break in 20 pieces like you've seen in those documentaries. And as we're coming down, I had a sense of, wow, dying is not scary. It's almost like we've been preparing for it our whole lives. But it was very sad. I didn't want to go. I love my life. And that sadness really framed in one thought, which is, I only wish for one thing. I only wish I could see my kids grow up. About a month later, I was in a performance by my daughter, first grader, not much artistic talent. Yeah. And I'm bawling, I'm crying like a little kid. And it made all the sense in the world to me. I realized at that point, by connecting those 2 dots, that the only thing that matters in my life is being a great dad. Above all, the only goal I have in life is to be a good dad. I was given the gift of a miracle of not dying that day. I was given another gift, which was to be able to see into the future and come back and live differently. I challenge you guys that are flying today. Imagine the same thing happens on your plane, and please don't. But imagine, and how would you change? What would you get done that you're waiting to get done because you think you'll be here forever? How would you change your relationships and the negative energy in them? And more than anything, are you being the best parent you can? Thank you.
Okay, what do you think? What'd you write down?
Things can change in an instant.
Tomorrow is not promised.
Tomorrow's not promised. What else?
Live life today.
We're not supposed to do anything about it.
Okay.
Time is now.
I wrote down.
It's important to be happy now, right?
That one hurts.
I wrote down the time that I've wasted.
On things that don't matter with people that do. So I'd love to say I've had this figured out. I've had the privilege to teach this class literally all over the country and now all over the world thanks to Zoom. I was in Houston teaching this last May, so May of 2021. I woke up in the morning to a text message, which is rarely good in my world, but I'm on Central Time, so could be good, could be bad. And it just said, pop, passed. So imagine going to teach a mindset class and your grandfather passed away and you got the news on the way there. What do you think happened with this video played? I'm like standing in the corner, people are, what? Nobody noticed, thankfully, until the end. And then I had one of my clients said, you were on the phone, everything okay? I said, yeah, you know, life happens. It wasn't totally unexpected, it was just that moment of happening right for them. And what jumped out to me then, and it still does today, what am I delaying? What am I pushing off? So I got home from that trip, and the first thing I said to my wife is, I've been delaying travel. What I really wanted to do, and Lewis and Michelle probably heard the story, I wanted to take my dad to Austin. And I wanted to drive cars with my dad. Austin has a Formula One track. I don't watch Formula One racing. I'm not into racing. If you are, cool. I know we're in Delaware. We're not terribly far from Dover. But Formula One track, has anybody been to that in Austin? Tiffany, you have?
Yeah.
Cool. It's
Yes.
pretty cool. It's a 3-mile track. So I booked the trip. My wife says, yeah, do it. We booked the trip for July. So remember last year? What was going on last year? There's some interesting things in May. Yeah. Interesting to say the least. It's still kind of interesting to say the least. So we booked the trip. I'm able to book first class seats for my dad on a flight. We're staying in my favorite hotel in Austin, doing all these things. I booked
Not
the
on
experience.
6th Street though, right?
Not on 6th Street, exactly right. Never again. This time I can afford to go, which I'm grateful for. And I had a margin in my life, and I have a margin in my life where I'm able to do that. So we booked the trip. I'll be honest, I booked it like the day my grandfather's service was, which was it was a double-edged sword. It was really great because I got to kind of see what I'm going to get to experience. Yet at the same time, how was my mindset? Like my clarity of my mind. Think it was like 100%?
No.
Probably not. Probably not 100%. And full disclosure, a bunch of my cousins stayed at my house the night before. We sat around the fire pit. We were telling stories, drinking bourbon. My mindset really wasn't 100%. If we're just being really honest. It was a little off. So my dad and I go to Austin. We fly in on a Friday. First thing, we go have tacos because that's what you do in Austin. And then we had some great barbecue. Got up the next morning. Our reservation was for like 10:30 a.m. We had great breakfast. Jump in an Uber. The guy's driving us out. It's a little bit outside of Austin. So he's driving us outside, and he's like, "Where are you guys going?" And we told him. And he's like, "Okay, I don't think there's anything going on today, but sure." We roll up into the parking lot, and there's literally not a person there. And then we see go-karts in the parking lot. Now, they were big go-karts, like 55 mile, 60 mile an hour go-karts, but it was kind of a letdown, if I'm gonna be honest, to think I just flew 1,400 miles with my dad to go drive go-karts. I probably could accomplish in July in Austin. Yeah, real hot. Now, they had just lifted the mask mandate in Austin at that point, that month, before they then brought it back. So restaurants were open. It was kind of a cool time to be there. And then we're standing there waiting for the place to open, which apparently didn't open until 11. And we hear the distinct noise of very fast cars going around a track. If you've ever heard it, you know what that sounds like. Interesting thing about this Formula One track is you can just walk right through the grandstands up into the gate if there's not an event going on. Like, you don't have to I mean, how many of you have been like the Spectrum or whatever the fields are called now in Philadelphia? Can you get near the field at all if something's not going on? No. The best you can do is maybe peek in from the outfield. This you could literally walk up, and we see 4 BMWs blowing by, passing each other on this. I said to my dad, I don't want to do that out there. I want to do this in here. So pick up the phone like any resourceful person and start making phone calls. So I called BMW and they said, we actually have 2 tickets. It's weird, but we have 2 tickets available. Do you want them? For a 1 o'clock spot. Then yes, grab my dad's license because they needed that, grab my credit card and book everything. Turns out, long story short, they sold us tickets that weren't actually available. And they still let us in the event. They had a glitch in their system for about an hour. They showed that they had 2 tickets. It's the only weekend in history, even up to this point, that BMW has ever done anything in Austin. Ever. It was a one-time event. Why do I share that with you? Do you think that felt like a roller coaster weekend? Up and down of, oh no, what did I mess up to this? What I really believe to have happened, this is my own belief, and you can choose to agree or not, I don't care. When I'm teaching this class, I'm participating as a student. So when I was teaching it in Houston, I wrote down what is the one thing I want to accomplish? What is that goal or that thing I've been delaying? And by physically writing it down and putting it out there and creating a plan, even though it didn't go the way I thought it was going to go, it actually turned out a lot cooler. So we got to drive the go-kart to the parking lot first, which was kind of fun. And then we got to go drive the whole M line of BMWs. I saw 145 on my speedometer while I was driving. That's fast and fun. And in an air-conditioned car, I was sweating bullets. So we're gonna come back to more of that. I'll get to more of that story because I think it's gonna be relevant about what we covered today. So what I'm gonna ask you to do, if you've got materials, I want you to flip over to page, well, let's cover some of this and we'll come back to the page I want you to flip over to. So the whole idea is that what differentiates people that have a lot from those that don't have as much? What differentiates the top people who achieve the most from those that don't? And it's these 3 things. It's what we found with research. It's mindset, attitudes, and approach to life. It starts with mindset. And when I first heard that, I thought, yeah, okay, sure, mindset, got it. Yeah, that must be the secret to all the success, mindset, right. And then I started seeing what people had in common that were highly successful. And they all shared this amazing mindset. And then you look at the approach to life and the attitude they have, they find a way to make things happen. They find a way to get things that they want to achieve. They fall in alignment. So the 6 personal perspectives, we're gonna go through these in detail. However, what they are is commit to self-mastery, commit to the 80-20 principle. These are gonna be foundational. They're gonna build on each other. We're gonna go into detail. Then we get into moving from E to P, making learning-based the foundation of your action plan, removing your limiting beliefs, and lastly, being accountable. So we're gonna build through all 6 of these today, put a little bow on it, and wrap up before 5 o'clock, or right around 5 o'clock. What I want you to look at right now is, what have you been delaying? So I want you to flip over to page, if you've got materials, I think it's around page 13? Nope, page 11. Page 11. And Michelle's thinking, you went through an instructor workshop, you should know the page numbers. All right, what's your goal? I want you to write down 3 things. We're gonna take about 30 seconds, and I want you to write down 3 things. What would you like to do? What would you like to accomplish? What would you like to achieve? What are those things that maybe you've been putting off that you'd like to achieve in your lifetime? 30 seconds. You're gonna need this for the remainder of the class. You need a writing utensil.
Maybe.
That'll help. Way to be resourceful and find one.
Hopefully I didn't steal yours.
Not yet. About 10 more seconds. What do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? Who do you want to become? Everybody got at least one thing? Okay. If you have more than one, circle one that we're going to focus on for this class. Pick one. That's going to be your focus for this class. That's the plan we're going to build today, by the way, to achieve whatever that thing is. I want you to write next to it, by when? Like a date. By when? How does that feel? Your face has told me exactly how that felt. You won't suck it, punk. Okay. Anybody want to share? It's where it becomes real. Okay.
You're going to vacation in Florida in December 2023.
Awesome. Don't say it now, you don't have to go in detail. Write out with who, where you go, and get as specific as you can get with this.
Own a beach house by July 27th, 2023.
Awesome. Why July 27th?
That's my birthday.
Great.
And I'll be down the beach next weekend for my birthday.
Cool. Same thing.
That's my goal for a year from now.
Great.
Instead of rent one, owning one.
Awesome. I'd recommend same thing. Write it down. Where is it? What beach? What block? What do you want it to be? Matt.
My house in Cannon Square by July 1st, 2023.
Great. Own your house in Kennett Square by then. Fantastic. So you know the house. Do you know the house? It's the one you live in? Okay.
I just know that's where I work and I want to live in the town that I work.
Fantastic. All right. Anyone else? It makes it real. Sharing it. Yes.
I would have owned a piece of commercial real estate by 2024, 66.
Fantastic. Same idea. Where? Write it down. Where do you want it to be? Now, I don't want us to have such tunnel vision that if we don't find that exact piece of commercial real estate in that exact area, you avoid other things. But yet getting to the point of really getting clarity on what that looks like. All right, anyone else? I want to give everybody the opportunity that wants to share it.
To be a six-figure agent as a luxury KWSE agent in 5 years.
Okay. Woo! Awesome.
You need one?
All right, so you spoiled the next part in a good way. No, in a great way. What would it take for those goals to happen in the next 6 months? So if you were to speed that up, now yours is the next 6 months. So that's good. It's going to be in December. But what would have to happen in order for that goal to happen in the next 6 months? Because to be totally honest, one of the biggest differences between millionaires and billionaires is they compress time. They have the someday goals, and the question is, what can I do to make that happen sooner? Sooner than you think. So at one point I went to there was a couples goal setting retreat that the One Thing put on every year. One of Gary's books that I have a copy of. If you haven't read this, easy read, good read, lots of great concepts in it. They put on a couples goal setting retreat every November, and I think they've taken some time off and they're kind of reframing it. Back when Jeff Woods was running this company, he and I became friends, and he was kind enough to say, hey, you need to come to this, and really put pressure on me to go. So my wife and I went together, which, number one, you go to a couples goal setting retreat, your families immediately think you're going to therapy. Just an FYI. They didn't understand what goal setting was. And although I've coached a whole lot of people, and I have the privilege to still coach a whole lot of people around the world, I did very little time in writing out my own goals. So I needed to actually go out of my environment and write down goals. Now, a couple cool things happened that weekend. One is I wrote down what I really wanted in the next 5 years. And my wife did the same thing. What did she really want? And the interesting part is some of them matched up. Then we came up with our bucket list. What are those 3 or 4 or 5 things that we want to accomplish someday in our world? I'm going to give you 2 of them because I think it's relevant. So this is November of whatever year that was, 4 years ago, let's say 19 approximately. And 2 of the things we had in common was we both wanted to go to the Masters because it's awesome. And I don't care your opinion on it, it's awesome. I'm just going to tell you factual. Want to go to the Masters, and we wanted to buy our forever house. That were 2 of our someday goals. I want to experience the Masters in Augusta and buy our forever house. Within 6 months, we did both. From the time we wrote it down to the time that we accomplished both of those goals was about 6 months. April 1st of 2020, we settled on what we consider our forever house. April 8th, 1 week later, we went to the Masters. Now, my question for me that you guys are getting to listen in on is, why don't I do that every year and actually write out big goals? So what prevents us from doing that? Or if you prefer, what prevents me from doing that?
You worry about others.
What people think. I can't say my goal out loud. Somebody's gonna think that's stupid. And that's really just my own self-talk. Now, how many of you experienced what I did? When I heard everybody sharing goals, my experience was, how do I help that person get that? Did anybody else experience that too? That feeling? Yeah, I knew Tiffany would. But I kind of had that sense of, I want you to go on vacation to Florida. I want you to buy your beach house. I want you to buy your commercial piece of real estate. I want you to experience those things that you want to experience. 6-figure salary, 6-figure income. I want you to go through those things because that's who you are. People actually want to help you. They can't help you if you don't share your goal. The Masters, such an interesting story. At least I find it interesting. I got an email from a friend that owns a company that said, hey, I ended up with 2 extra tickets to the Masters for a practice round. Anybody want them? I've entered the lottery for the Masters every year. I just got my denial last Friday. That I didn't win again. Yeah, fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
You get all excited, then it's like a little.
yeah, a little blur. I was logging in every day to check my application. Nope, denied again. And the reality is we got to go to a practice round at no cost other than getting us there. Anyone been? It's awesome. Do it. But I don't even care if you don't like golf. The prices are still locked in at like $19.75. So a beer is still $3 and a sandwich is $2.50. Amazing. And really good time. So that was a bucket list. And we were able to accomplish that. It showed up for us. So I don't need to know what your beliefs are, but things tend to show up when you ask for them, when you put it out there. Good and bad. So be careful what you ask for. The Forever House. We had moved out of the city, so we lived in the city until we had our second kid on the way, and my wife was walking our daughter one day while pregnant, like pushing her in a stroller, and she stopped by the park that was across the street from where we lived, and there were all these like little chalk outlines and bullet casings in those outlines. How long did we live in the city after that? Not long. That was a quick, we're gonna be moving out of the city. Nothing against the city, I love Philadelphia. But it was time to move at that point. So we moved to Downingtown. We had a little stop in between in Ardmore short term. We bought a house that we really liked, and then bonus baby showed up. And it was time to buy a bigger house. What was interesting about that is there was a neighborhood kind of close to us that we didn't know about until we lived there. And it's this little quiet street that you don't really notice that there's houses on it because you can't see any of them from the actual street. And there's only 7 houses. You can only see 3 of the 7, the other 4 in the woods behind our now Forever House. And what was interesting is very rarely do any houses go up for sale there. And then suddenly there was an open house. And I looked it up, and it happened to be on a weekend that we were home. So I drove the 1 mile from our current house to the doorstep of this house, and I looked at it and thought, wow, this house is amazing. And I looked at the MLS sheet, and it was listed as the wrong town. It had been in the market for almost a year. It had a different school district than the reality. I live in Downingtown. Downingtown has desirable school districts. I don't even know what school district it had, but it wasn't as desirable. So we made an offer, and to be honest, it was the stretch of the stretch on our budget to be able to buy this house. Like, to the point at which my lender and my accountant both said, are you sure? My debt to income ratio wasn't ideal at that moment, and yet we said, we're gonna figure out a way to do it. We hadn't even talked about listing our house at this point. But the property came up, we saw it, it made sense. We listed our house, I made it contingent, I was my own agent. Not the best idea, being totally honest, but I was my own agent. We made our first offer contingent upon the sale of our home. And the agent said to me, okay, but before I'm gonna present your offer, I need to see your house. So I want you to imagine for a second, it's Sunday, you saw a house, just had baby number 3, bunch of little kids running around all over the place, and an agent wants to come see and evaluate your house before he's going to present the offer that you just gave to his sellers. Yeah, there was an oh no moment, we'll say, because we're streaming this, but it didn't say oh no. And we quickly ran around trying to get our house together. The agent came through our house and he sat down with us on the couch and he said, you're not going to get that number for this house. The only way I'll present your offer, really great agent. The only way I'll present your offer is if you remove the home sale contingency. Now, what do you do at that moment? Yeah, but I still wanted the house. That's a problem. So it's a little bit of a delicate situation. So we were trying to figure out what to do. So we slept on it, and we decided, hey, you know what? Let's see what happens. We'll put our house in the market. We need to do some things first. We'll get it all ready. Fast forward February, so this is all January, February, we're negotiating. Then we decided, hey, let's look at some other houses. What happens when you find the house you really love and you didn't get it immediately? Everything else wasn't quite as nice. It didn't have as much land, it didn't have all the things that this particular property had. So I had the privilege to go fly to Austin with a recruit to KW and meet with Gary Keller. If you have that opportunity, you say yes. And we went and met with Gary. And on the way down, I'm saying to the agent, like, you know, this house we really like, and we're talking about it. We're sitting at the bar, we're having a cocktail, and we get there, and the whole thing, we go to dinner. That night, the agent calls me and says, give me your highest and best offer because we've got something else coming in. So at like 11 o'clock at night, Austin time, which is midnight Eastern time, I'm negotiating my own transaction. The first human being to hear that I got a house under contract was Gary Keller. Talk about weird in the scheme of things, and his reaction was great, because it was just like, okay. That's not why he was there to meet with me, but I like needed to tell somebody at that moment that I just bought a house. Now what happened next is we got exactly what we needed to get for our house. It closed exactly in the timeline. We owned both houses for 30 days. We had the right every single thing fell in alignment. Right before we were scheduled to close on our house, I got the phone call. We were in Mississippi visiting my aunt and uncle, and I got the phone call from the other agent that you don't want to get. That person that keeps you up at night. You said appraisers, right? Yeah. It appraised for $10,000 less than they have it under agreement for. Now, what I didn't share with you is I reached out to the other agent and said, hey, listen, we're going to be buying this house first. There's going to be 30 days we own both houses. I know what a huge pain it is moving with children. If they want to occupy early, just tell us. She said, what do you want for it? I said, I don't want anything for it other than they'll have insurance in case something would go wrong. So we made them the offer that if you want it, no problem. So what do you think the buyer said when they found out it was $10,000 under?
Can you come to the deal?
They said, no problem. We'll bring the money. $10,000, no problem. Now, I didn't expect that reaction. Now, $10,000 wouldn't have blown up the deal, but it would have made things a little messy for us. Again, I said we were really, really stretched. Okay, why am I sharing all these stories with you?
You never gave up.
Did anybody write down something that you don't actually believe? Okay. So if you wrote down something, I want you to unlimit some of that thinking. Write it down. I don't care if it scares you. It may need to scare you a little bit. Now, the other couple things on the list, if I'm just being honest, I don't even remember what they were. So if you look at that goal, how are you doing with it right now? Go back to that goal. You wrote it down. How are you doing with it? Okay? How would you feel if you didn't achieve it? And you don't have to answer out loud, but if you didn't feel anything if you don't achieve it, it's probably not your goal. It might be nice to have, but it's probably not actually your goal. There's a book they recommended we read before Mega Camp. The Ultimate Secret to Getting Absolutely Everything You Want. Has anyone read this yet? By the way, good luck finding it, number one. I'm thankful I bought it the moment they said it. It's now sold out everywhere, and you have to pay like $60 to buy it on eBay at this point. I got one for like $9 early on, which I'm keeping this. Sorry. I'm gonna give you the secret really easily. The secret is having the willingness to do whatever it takes. That's the entire book. The entire book is having the willingness to do whatever it takes in order to make that happen. And the interesting spoiler, you probably won't have to. You have to do much less than all of the possible things that you need to actually do. Okay, AHAs so far. AHAs for our guests stands for Agents Helping Agents. It's like a light bulb moment. What are you hearing so far? Not all at once.
I think for me, it's the reminder to ask myself the right questions. You can, we can think about all the things that you want and where you want to go, what you want to do, but if you're not asking yourself the right question, you're going to be on the wrong path.
Yeah, with the wrong questions, any destination might do, for that matter. Then you have clarity on it. Thank you. What else? What else are you hearing in this first chapter? This is exactly what you expected.
It's a roller coaster, kind of ups and downs. It's just keep pushing through.
It's a journey. Yeah, this book actually describes climbing. Anyone ever climb a big mountain? Okay, me neither, by the way. And it describes it if you don't. Yeah, I've seen them too.
Flight of stairs.
And according to the book, part of the climbing of a mountain is you better enjoy the process of actually climbing. Because you're actually at the peak just for a little bit. So I tested this out, and I coached a client that lived in Colorado for a while, and I said, what did you climb? And he said they climbed like 6 or 7 of the 14ers, 14,000 plus. And he said the most time we ever spent at the top was 20 minutes. And oh, by the way, the top's really crowded. You think you have this euphoric moment that you're sitting there with the view and you're alone. He goes, no, that doesn't happen. There's tons of people up at the top. And what's amazing in his journey, the view at 13,000 feet isn't that much worse than the view at 14,000 feet, and there's far fewer people. So what he shared with me is he learned by his second or third mountain that if he enjoyed the climb and took it in along the way up, the whole day was better. If he waited until he actually got to the top to enjoy it, it was fleeting. It was done in a second. Does that help a little bit? All right, first one, we're moving like the wind. First step, commit to self-mastery. If you're following along, we're on page 15-ish. Anyone else have a remarkable? Yeah, sometimes they're really great for taking notes. They're not great for flipping quickly through materials. So we're actually on page 17. Thank you. Page 17. All right, how many of you are left-handed? How many of you are right-handed? Okay, for all the righties. Sorry, lefties, I'll get to you in a second. For all the righties, how many of you have spent any significant time learning to write with your left hand? Okay? Wow, that's so many of you. First part, why? Okay, just for fun?
Right.
All right, great. Enough that you got really good at it?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna kind of blow that up for a second because the whole point of this is actually looking at what are you already good at and getting better at it. Now the lefties, the reason I didn't pick on you, I'm told that if you went to Catholic school during a certain period of time and you wrote with your left hand, you had a nun help you out that you need to write with your right. So there was an actual motivation there. For the rest of you, I hope you're doing your one thing before you're practicing with the other hand. Pending injury, that's fine. We've all played around with it, with draw with both hands. But the point is, if you spent that same amount of time getting better with your right hand instead, and you're already right-handed, what would happen? You're just gonna exponentially blow through that. You're gonna get so much better. So the interesting part about self-mastery, it's actually knowing what you're already good at and getting better at that. Instead of looking at the things that you aren't as good at and focusing on those weaknesses. What do you do for the weaknesses?
You make your strengths work for you.
Someone else do it.
Leverage.
It doesn't make somebody else do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to bet that your weakness is somebody else's strength.
Yes.
How freeing is that? This is one of the few businesses you could possibly own, real estate, that you can go from having every job to having none of the jobs. What other businesses can you be the janitor and then own the building? Are there any examples of that? There is Stan Lee, the famous person, and he was a janitor that became Stan Lee, the comic creator. He had this great idea. That's rare. He's a unicorn, or was a unicorn. I don't see any unicorns, although you do have a unicorn in your own way. You're probably really good at something to a level that somebody else isn't. Do you know what that thing is? That's the point of self-mastery. What are you naturally good at, and then how do you actually get better? So I want you to think of your goal. And by think of it, I mean look at it. When you look at that goal, what are your strengths that are gonna help you achieve that? There's a book. If you haven't read it, I'd recommend it, called The Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Anyone read it? Oh, I saw it's sort of a hand. Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. You've probably heard the concept. 10,000 hours to mastery. Malcolm Gladwell, it was one of the people that have said that. And he uses an example in the book of the band, the Beatles. What were they known for?
Music.
Yeah, music. What type of music? Pop, rock type of music. How'd they get started? What's that? In Germany. Yeah, and they played in, my understanding is they played in gentlemen's clubs. That's the version I've heard of the story, and that's the version that Malcolm talks about in that. They played 8-hour sets in a gentleman's club. How long's a Beatles song?
3 minutes.
3-ish. Some of them are shorter, or some are a little bit longer. Let's just say an average of 3 minutes. How many songs can you play that are 3 minutes long in an 8-hour set? 5 days a week. So you look at somebody really talented like that type of a band, and then you realize all the hard work. They got to their 10,000 hours together incredibly fast because they were committed full time to that 10,000 hour thing. I played in bands. I played in a band, I should say. I played guitar in a band for a while. What was interesting is when you marry the ex-girlfriend of your bandmate, the band doesn't stay together.
Oh, goodness. Oh, Tim, say it ain't so.
Interesting, when you start dating them, the band actually falls apart. Just like that. So we would play pubs in Philadelphia, and the longest set I think we ever played was on like St. Patty's Day one year. We played for 2.5 hours with like several breaks along the way. We probably played, I don't know, 50 songs or more in that period of time. I was completely exhausted by the end of that. And I'll just use the word exhausted. It was St. Patty's Day. We had a lot of fun. And the reality was that was once a month at most that we were playing a gig. Once in a while, there might be a second one that would squeeze in. But we were hobbyists at best. Playing 8 hours a time is literally unheard of. Is there any band right now that you're aware of that plays 8-hour sets 5 days a week?
No.
Well, no wonder there hasn't been another Beatles. There's a reason why they've sold so many albums. Now, were they talented?
Yeah.
Those that are still living are talented. Sure, absolutely. And yet, talent alone doesn't work. You want to prove that? Go to Nashville, go to Memphis, go to 6th Street in Austin, non-dirty 6th Street in Austin. Listen to some live music. You're going to hear really talented people. The biggest difference is they don't have their 10,000 hours. Okay, so going back to your thing, does that help a little bit identify in what area do you need to build that strength muscle that you already have up into a level of mastery? Absolute mastery. All right, here's an example of mastery. The setup for the BMW thing, I'll just call it the thing, that's a very technical term. The setup was you're in pairs, so my dad and I were in pairs. You wore a helmet with one of those weird helmet socks, and there were 4 cars at a time. The first car is the instructor. Then you're in 3 other cars. All makes sense so far. Obviously there's one driver in each car and there's one passenger, if you choose to be a passenger or not. The instructor gives you instruction at the beginning that just says, keep up and follow my lines. So go where he goes. Keep up, follow my lines. The second thing is listen to my instructions. So each car had a walkie-talkie in it, in the door. And he said, don't touch it. Just listen. I don't need you to talk back to me, just listen. So we're driving, I'm driving at this point, and there's 3 cars, he's the first car. We're going 145 miles an hour around the track. He's looking in his rearview mirror, holding on with one hand, talking to me through his walkie-talkie, and he said, hey, red car, you're gripping the steering wheel too tight. I'm in the red, I'm in the red car. I did say the other word. I'm in the red car, he's talking to me. How in the world did this guy know in the front car, going 145 miles an hour, driving with one hand, looking in the rearview mirror, as I'm holding on for dear life, trying to catch up with this guy, that I'm gripping the wheel too tight? What was the difference? Part of it, I was off his line. He could tell the way the car was mastery. You know, we both have driver's license, but he has a level of mastery. When's the last time you did something that you sucked at?
All the time.
This morning. When's the last time you did something new that was exciting, new, that you wanted to do and you weren't very good at it the first time? The most common answer I get to that? High school, maybe college. It's been a while. It was the first time in a while that I had been that bad at something that I thought I might be pretty good at. Like, I drive every day. I've driven for a long time. I got my license on my 17th birthday. I was that kid that got his I lived in New Jersey. I got my permit on my 16th birthday. I was driving before I was 16 with all my friends that were older. In places I shouldn't have been doing. I've been driving a long time and I didn't realize how bad I was at it. The real proof came at the end. So after 4 hours of going through all different cars and having a really good time, they say, all right, it's our turn. Now you're a passenger and the instructors are the drivers. Yeah, now we realize how bad we really were. They had been holding back all day, putting up with our BS, driving slow. while they really showed us what the cars were capable of. I don't know, I didn't see the speedometer, but I do know the fact that his lines were much better and we were moving around the track the way you're supposed to be. Clearly professional. Okay, so that thing you wrote down, what do you need to build? What strength do you need to build? And are you committed to mastery? Are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to do the time it takes to do the work? What's our attrition rate as a company? I'm sorry, as an industry?
It's,
I've heard 80s. Like, not many agents make it past the 5-year mark. Why not?
they don't commit to mastery.
Honestly, most of the time it's not willing to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
Quite simply, not willing to do the work. Gary said at one point in one of our events, all of you in this room will be millionaires. The problem is many of you will die before you get to that point. If you live long enough, you'll be a millionaire by doing any activity. So what we're looking at is what are those activities that will actually help you accomplish that goal. All right, questions, ahas. Good so far? Again, we're using our materials sort of today. Is that okay? They're a guide. We're gonna get the big pieces of it. So what I want you to think about then, that thing that you wrote down, we're gonna do one more exercise in this story before we move on. That thing that you wrote down, what are the obstacles getting in your way? Write down the top 2 obstacles that jump into your mind getting in your way. Follow-up question, are they movable? Okay. Anyone want to share an obstacle that you wrote down?
Mine is time management, managing our time.
Time. Okay, what was your goal, if you don't mind? Is that okay? I'm sorry,
Yeah, that's fine. I want to be a 6-figure realtor.
Cool.
Within a year.
Great, within a year. And time is the challenge. So the question is that something you can move? So follow-up question, and you don't have to answer out loud for all of it. Thank you for being willing to share that. Is there a model you could follow in order to move your time? Is it possible?
Yes.
Great. Anyone have something that they wrote down that's an obstacle that you can't move? College. Tell me more.
I will do that at the same time. So that's absolutely time management.
Time management, not enough time. And here's the question I consider, and this is not to put you on the spot, so just think about it. Is there anyone else that's done what you want to do while doing what you're doing?
Yes.
Cool. We're gonna get to this in a second, but I'm gonna spoil it for everybody by going to it right now. Talk to that person.
I don't know those people.
Find them.
Okay.
And here's how. We're gonna get to that. So who wants to help her find that person? All right, you can't see all the people in the back, but there are a lot of hands on this side and some hands over here, the people that want to help you. Connect with them and find who went through college while they were building whatever it is that you wrote down.
Can I just share something?
Please.
I'm getting my PhD right now, and I'm building a company, so I'm happy to help you with any questions that you have. Good?
Cool.
So you found it just by putting it out there.
So imagine for a second, and thank you for being willing to do that, and I knew that because I know Michelle. So I knew someone would raise their hand, and someone would raise their hand. And there are lots of other hands that went up too. But here's what's interesting. Had she not chosen, and I'm sorry, tell me your name. Michaela. Had Michaela not chosen to share that with all of us, what would have happened?
She would have never gone to find something.
Maybe, maybe not. We don't know is the short answer, but the reality check is it got solved in 10 seconds. So a willingness to put it out there, again, talked about it from that book, a willingness is the first part, a willingness to do whatever it takes. Okay, thoughts or questions before we keep moving? I didn't know that was gonna work in this room, so it worked out so
I
well.
just got goosebumps.
It works, it can happen. All right, continuing on.
But I think, so just to piggyback off of
Yeah.
that, for me personally, what I've seen in real estate is there's no other industry that's like that. Where like, you know, if you're, let's say in the corporate world, I come from the corporate world, to go to find somebody to say, hey, I want your job one day, they're like, oh, the health, I'm gonna help this guy out, he's trying to come take my job. But there's agents out there that I connect with on a daily basis that's like, I wanna help you get there.
Yeah.
And that's powerful.
Huge. All right, I want you guys all to do something. Write down, if you're selling real estate or your goal is to sell real estate this year, how many total units do you want to close on this year? Between now and December 31st. What's that unit goal? How many units do you want to close between now and December 31st? There might have been an aha that just happened for some of you, by the way. I don't know. So write it down. Okay, I want you to write next to that 5.5 million transactions. That's our estimate with how many total transactions are going to happen in 2022. Now you may be saying, well, the year's halfway over. Well, interestingly enough, there's two sides to every transaction. So mathematically speaking, there are 5.5 million at-bats or 5.5 million commissions that are going to be paid between now and the end of the year, approximately. Does your number fit inside of that?
Yes.
So there's plenty. So back to your point, there's an abundance. There's plenty of deals. Now, would you all agree that there's going to be an agent that's not as good as you, that doesn't work as hard as you, that doesn't have your ethics, that doesn't have your skill set, that's going to take some of those transactions?
Yeah.
Okay, what are they doing that you're not willing to? Uh-oh. What are they doing? I'll give you it. They're talking to human beings. I have the unique privilege to coach a couple people that are in Gary Keller's mastermind. So the top 100 agents in our company get invited to Gary's mastermind. And for whatever reason, some of them have chosen me as their coach. What they all have in common is the same challenge all of you have in common. Leads, listings, leverage, mindset. Those four things. Enough leads, enough listings, enough leverage to give them time back, and the mindset to keep going. Does that surprise you that those are the same challenges that you might have? Does anyone have a challenge that doesn't live in one of those four buckets? Leads, listings, leverage, mindset. Okay, isn't that interesting? What do you think they talk about in that mastermind? They really do. Yeah, at one point, I wasn't in the room, yet I was told by one of my clients who was in the room. Gary went around to each person. He said, Jim, what's your biggest challenge? What's your biggest challenge? What's your biggest challenge? Went to every single person in that room. At that point, 25 agents at a time were in the room, and they did like 3 days in a row. Yeah, hard to believe 25% of the agents that are in that room didn't show up. That were invited to that room, still didn't show up. And Gary walked up to the board. Do you see appropriate board markers?
Yes.
All right, good. Ask me why I have to ask that. And Gary drew this. And he said, leads, listings, and leverage. Anyone have a problem that doesn't live inside of that? And the aha that they all had in the room at the same time is the reason they don't leave that conversation is because it actually has the answers they need. Mindset's the only other addition to that. Okay, a little bit of a tangent. Last part on this. How do you use your strength to overcome that obstacle? What's that key strength that you have to overcome that obstacle?
Just going back to what you said, leads, listing, and leverage. What doesn't live inside of that? It is the mindset. So,
yeah, mindset's the only other one.
Yeah.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, besides leases and leverage, and I'm just going to put mindset out there as the other possibility. And that's ultimately where it starts, which is why we're all here today. Interestingly enough, you become a millionaire in your mind before you do on paper.
I think you heard that from a very smart
really,
woman
really
today.
Smart.
Should we expect the lead time of that?
Well, and that's the reality is it depends. So I shared with you my story. I've given you pieces of it. I'm going to give you a little bit more if that's okay with you. Is it okay that I'm sharing that, by the way? Just tell me to stop if it's boring. Okay, cool. Or you can leave. That's okay too. We're not tied to the outcome. We get to the point in which I have a new role. I'm in a new company. I'm the team leader of this new market center. I'm making more money than I've ever made as a team leader at that point. I had a great base salary. We're growing the market center. And then I'm at a recruiting appointment, and I remember who I'm sitting across with distinctly. We had just bought a nice car. I didn't have a car up until that point. I lived in the city. I walked everywhere. When we got married, my wife had like a 90-something Honda Civic with some dents along the side. It was perfect to have in the city. I had to use GPS to commute to my market center that was in Bryn Mawr, going back and forth. Anyone been to Bryn Mawr? When you drive around as the team leader of a market center at 92 Honda Civic with dents all over it, like 400,000 miles on it, and nothing against Bryn Mawr, in a snobby area, how are you perceived? Successful or not? Okay, and then we realized that we got a kid coming now at this point, and this car probably isn't safe for us to be in at this point, let alone putting a small child in. So we did what any smart new parents would do, and before our daughter was born, we went and bought a Mercedes GL 450, the giant SUV. Because, you know, kids have a lot of stuff. You need a 7-passenger car. Now, we bought it used, thankfully, and yet the reality was we probably bought it before we should have. We probably spent more money. Now, it wasn't crazy, but it's still a $60,000 car, and I wasn't making the amount of money in order to do that, but amazing how quickly they approve you. You go to the Mercedes and they say, I want to buy that. Okay, cool, let's run your credit. Good, you're good. How much money do you make? Nope, give me another number. Okay, yeah, that's the right one. So I'm on a recruiting appointment. I'm talking to this big agent that owns his own brokerage, and I get the phone call, and I said to him, hey, listen, my wife's expecting. She's calling me. Do you mind if I answer? And I didn't care his answer. I had already answered. And I answered it, and I just hear her say, our bank accounts were overdrawn, and it says we have $0 in the account. How is that possible? So I said, I'll call you when I'm done this appointment. I know we have reserves. We're building up reserves. Life's getting better. We're on a trajectory. And I learned a valuable lesson that day. Hire a great accountant. One that you actually know is doing your taxes. Because in the event that you find out 6 years later that your accountant hasn't done your taxes and filed them for the last 6 years, the IRS will actually do your taxes for you. They will. They are kind. They will do it for you.
With no write-offs.
No. And lots of fees and penalties at a high interest rate. And then guess what? They'll just come in your bank account and take it. And there wasn't enough to cover the $55,000 I owed in back taxes. So they took every penny we had after that point. End of the month. We're renting a house in the city now. Rent's due. What do you do? Uh-oh. Well, no, I didn't want to lose it, and I'm in a new employer now. He just thought I bought a Mercedes, and he's happy. He feels like he's got leverage going, and then he got a notice. Now, thankfully, the notice was not to that company. It was sent to my former company, and they forwarded it on and said, hey, heads up, something bad's coming, and it was tax lien. Now, I very quickly found a really good accountant, and took care of it, and worked our way out of that massive debt. Okay, why am I sharing that with all of you? Check your accountant, find out what's important, and you can be humbled in a moment. In a moment. Now, absolutely. To be honest, the reason you're hearing these negative stories, or they may sound like negative, I never learned anything from any success I ever had. Nothing. Every lesson I've gotten has been from a failure. From something stupid. Now, I shared that story with a group of coaches recently, and all of them came off mute and said, me too. We had that same problem. Different version, same story. Okay, why do you think that is? That so many of us have had that challenge in real estate? And please don't tell me if you have. It's okay. You don't have to.
So consumed in one part that you're not worried about the other.
What part of real estate school tells you to pay your taxes? Just being honest.
Write a contract, you don't want to pay tax.
Whose fault was it, by the way?
Yours?
It's mine. It's my fault. I have to own that. Now, what you don't know is family reunion happened right around that time, which is our second event, and we landed in Philadelphia after being there a couple days, and I had a voicemail from a guy I used to play cards with in the city, just for fun, nothing crazy. We'd all have a $20 buy-in, and we played till the money was gone. We'd order pizzas and have fun. And my friend's name's Max. He's a jeweler, and the voicemail said, "Hey, give me a call. I'm getting divorced, and I'm excited about it." Where's this going? And I called him back and said, hey Max, man, everything okay? He goes, yeah, we're it's finally happening, and you know it needed to happen for all these reasons. I haven't talked to this guy in a couple of years. Now, he's my jeweler that has helped me over the years, and we've been friends, and he said, well, I'm buying a house, and I need your help. It's in Bryn Mawr, you know, I know a lot of people, but I know, like, and trust you. Here's the address. I said, what do you mean you're buying this? I'm buying it. We did have some of that, and then they develop companies that'll actually do that. So why I share that with you is asking for help, like you did, it's okay. We need help at times. Now, I asked another friend, and he said, good luck. By the way, that was great advice too he gave me. Good luck. Go figure it out. So you're gonna experience this up and down. The key is that over time, is it continue to go off. So from the now negative 50,000, that's fun to be at. Several years, within 5 years, literally was an investor in 4 market centers, making good money, team leader, bought our forever house. Like all of those dominoes showed up within 5 years. So you may have heard that you're 5 years away from whatever you want. That's actually ripped off from Gary Keller's story, because that's what he experienced, but I got to relive it. That in 5 years, everything in my world literally changed. So back to your timeline question, that was a really long answer to your question. When's it gonna show up? Within 5 years. How long does it take you in 5 years? Yeah, it's a blink. It really is. 5 years is a blink, but yes, it does take 5 years. If you have a destination in mind. Now, here's the reality check. If you don't have a destination in mind, that clock never starts. So you've got to get that destination. Gary said to us many times, but recently I heard him say it again, you'll overestimate what's possible in the next 12 months, yet drastically underestimate what you can accomplish in 5 years. That was a nice way, I think, and what I heard in that was give yourself permission to not hit every single thing you have to hit in the next 12 months. Now I realize I compress time for all of us. It's a game. We're playing on both ends of that. All right, ahas from this chapter. That was a long one. Make it shorter.
Patience is important.
Patience. Yeah, it's incredibly important.
Proper process.
Have a process. Have a willingness to do whatever. How comfortable was that conversation to have with my OP after I just bought a $60,000 Mercedes?
He's like, can I borrow your car from you?
The reality check, he should have told me no. He probably should have said no, go figure it out. But he felt bad. He did. He felt bad for me in the situation we were in. He showed me grace. And I'm grateful for that. So it's a good reminder of who do I need to help. Now, when I had a friend a couple of years ago ask in a really dark time and say, hey, I just need $2,000, can you help me? I had to say yes. I had to. Because at challenging times, people have helped me. Now, that's my own choice, and I get that. Do you think I've seen any of that $2,000 back? Okay. By the way, I didn't expect it back. Interesting about my OP at the time, I didn't actually expect it back either. He was willing to lose it if that's what it took. So, no surprise, we stayed in business for a long time. And it was good. And then at some point, we're not in business. That's okay too. So you're gonna ebb and flow inside of that. All right, chapter 2. Wow, you're saying, how in the world are you getting down to 5 o'clock? We will. It comes together. 80-20
So I assume that,
yeah,
that
please.
deal did close, right?
It closed. Yeah.
I was waiting for the way today's been going, I was waiting for it, but it didn't close.
So what was interesting, that closed in May of that year, and I wasn't selling real estate. I was team leader of the market center. It was literally a deal that fell in my lap. Right after that, or right around that same time, I got a call from a friend that I've known for a long time in the city. He goes, hey, my buddy wants to buy this place in the city. It's new construction. Can you help him? I said, well, I normally don't, but yeah, I'll help your friend. It was another $1.2 million deal that closed that summer. That closed in June. So I had a deal in May that closed for 1.2 and a deal in June that closed 1.2. How much does that equal? Equal the same amount of money almost that I owed.
But you had to pay taxes on it, you knew that lesson.
I
know. Sorry.
Yep. And every quarter that check gets written still to this day. So with my good accountant now. He sends me my notice and says, you owe this and do this. Yep, no problem. By the way, it took time to get out of that. because even though that money came in, I still didn't have enough of a margin in my life to be able to successfully get past that. It took time. It took years to get past that. Okay, 80-20, what is it? What's the 80-20 principle?
80% of your results come from the 20% of stuff you do that matters.
Yeah, 80% of your results come from 20% of the stuff that you do that matters. That's really well said. It's exactly what it is. Here's a couple examples. You wear 20% of your clothes 80% of the time.
That's true.
Shirt fits good. You're like, I'm gonna.
It's my comfort shirt.
These hands don't make me feel like I need it.
Has a flex in the waist.
You spend 80% of your time in 20% of your house.
That's true.
You probably spend 80% of your time with 20% of the people you know. The downside, 80% of what you do doesn't matter. 80% of what you do only gives you 20% of your results. Okay, how does that feel? So are you focusing on the right things? So the example that kind of comes with this chapter is about the rocks in a bowl. And about putting big rocks in a bowl. So I'm going to give you a different version of that. Some of you may say, what are you talking about? But I'm going to give you a different version that I think you'll remember. So I want you to imagine for a second you're in a college classroom. I'm not picking on you for being in college. It's awesome. You're in a college classroom and the professor comes out and he puts down a bowl. He puts a bowl right here, a big glass bowl you can see through, and he puts another one here. Sorry for my reading. This bowl right here, he's got bricks, he's got golf balls, he's got a bag of sand, and he's got a 6-pack of beer. That wasn't intended to be right in front of you. This side, same story. Bricks, golf ball, bag of sand, 6-pack of beer. He starts here and he grabs the 6-pack of beer and he dumps it all in the bowl. And then he comes back and he grabs the sand and he puts some of the sand in the bowl. By the time he gets to the golf balls, water's starting to come out. There's not any room at all for the bricks. This side, starts with the bricks, puts them in. Magically, some golf balls still fit, a bunch of sand still fits, and some of the beer still fits inside of the bowl. The lesson he gives to students is, if you start out by drinking beer, you're not going to have time to play golf, sit on the beach, and do the things that actually matter. If you start with things that matter, you're going to have time to go golfing, you're going to have time to lay on the beach, and you're actually going to have time to drink beer with your friends. Okay, will that stick in your head? Same things, does the order matter? Okay, great. Ahas from the 80-20 so far. Will you remember that? Okay. There's a reason that there's a lot of stories today. Why is that? Friends aren't so important.
I think we remember stories.
You remember stories. You may forget some of the concepts, but you're going to remember the stories. That's the point. So if it feels like you're just listening to lessons, you're learning. I promise you, it's going to stick. A lot of these things. So back to the 80-20, that was the big rock story. It's a little different than the version of materials. A little bit. Took a little bit of social liberty there. You can't abuse your liberty there. That. So I want you to think about your goal. Go back to that goal you wrote down on page 13. And I want you to list out all of the possible things you could do that would help you get to that goal. So we're going to take about a minute. I know, that's not enough time. That's okay. We're going to take just a minute and write down all of the possible things you could do in order to help achieve that goal. Got it? The goal you wrote down. All right, you got a minute. Write it down. Intentionally not giving you longer. You don't need longer. I want you to look at that list. I want you to circle the 20%. Circle the big rocks. What are those 2 things on that list, if you write out like 10 or so, maybe 3 things that actually have a bigger impact than everything else on that list? Okay, take a look at your circles. If you could only do one, what would you do? there's only one thing on that list that would actually have the biggest impact on giving you momentum towards that goal, what would it be? Get a mentor. Cool. All right, so here's what I have you do. Pull out your phone or your calendar. Guess what we're doing? Yeah, look at your calendar for the next 7 days. When's your second 30-minute spot that you're going to take action on that one thing? Now, if it's a big goal and you want to accomplish it soon, I would suggest in the next 24 hours, you take the first step. My ideal world would be that you do this before the end of the week. If you really want to be adventurous and you really want to take steps towards this, I would say before the end of the day would be even better. That first thing that you identified, whatever that is going to have the biggest impact on what you wrote down as a goal. Okay, ahas.
My goal was to become more clear.
It's becoming clear?
Yeah.
Good. Good. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. This grows. Do you feel it building? You feel the building blocks kind of coming together? We identified your goal. We looked at what your strengths were. Now we're looking at what are those key elements, or what's that one thing that's going to have the biggest impact on everything else. This book, the one thing. If you take the jacket off, like I do to travel with it, because some of my colleagues are traveling with a bunch of books. What does it look like? What does the book itself look like? For anybody that's taking the jacket off the book.
Usually one color.
Plain.
Plain? It's a domino. Interesting enough, the book looks like a domino. Like the first domino. The idea behind the book is what's that first domino you need to knock over, so that by knocking that over, it knocks over the next domino that's 1.5 times bigger, 1.5 times bigger again and again and again, that same process. That's the one thing that you just identified. It's that first domino that's gonna push it over. I had this great idea at one point that I was gonna run every day for 66 days. I'm not a runner by choice. I didn't want to do that. But I had this idea, I'm gonna run every day for 66 days. What I didn't know is that day 66, I was gonna be in Austin, Texas, coincidentally.
In July.
And not in July, in June, to become a maps coach. It just happened to line up the day 66 I was there. So the podcast at the time was run by Jeff Woods for 66, for the one thing, and I emailed him. I didn't know him. Emailed and said, hey Jeff, interesting story. I'm gonna hit day 66 of my first 66-day challenge. The idea is that if you do something for 66 days, it's a habit. That's the idea behind it. So I was doing that, and I shared with them the short story of, at the time our daughter was 4, and I put up on our fridge my 66-day challenge chart with check marks as I'd accomplished it. And at 4, she said, what's that? I said, well, this is, if I run, I get a check mark. If I don't, I don't. And she's, being a 4-year-old and quite inquisitive and already demanding at that point at 4, said, I want one too. So we started tracking, like, if she had a good day, she got a check mark. If she had a day that made us grateful for the good days, she didn't. Those of you that have been around kids understand what that's like. Over time, we both wanted to string together check marks. So I shared that short story with Jeff, and he said, that's awesome, you need to come on our podcast. So what I didn't know is when I outlined that goal and I sent an email, I made a stand-up meeting with my office at the time, and they come and get me, and they said, somebody from KW International is on the phone for you. You need to take this call. To which my mind went to, what dumb thing did I say that just got sent out? And on the other end was Jeff Woods, who was running it, and had a great conversation. We became friends as a result, and it led to a lot of other really cool things. So again, another story I hope you're hearing of don't underestimate the power of one little thing like an email. I actually didn't expect him to read it. I didn't know who he was. I didn't expect anything about it. I didn't know that years later that we would become such good friends and he'd be a big impact on future things like the couples goal setting retreat. Now you kind of see how the story comes together. I didn't know it at the time, but you don't get to see it until you're past it. All right, that was about the one thing. So you're making a success list. The biggest challenge with the to-do list, it assumes everything's equally important, or it assumes that the order you put it in is somehow more important than the other. If you're like me, if I write out a to-do list, I choose what I like to do the most, and I do that first. I've been known to order dessert and have it before dinner.
Why not?
Yes.
Sounds like a great idea.
It's a fantastic idea. Because why not have what you enjoy the most when I have the most room to eat it? Don't give that to any kids that are in your world. But the point is, do you have a success list? So the difference between the two is hyper focus on what matters the most. That's the difference between a success list and a to-do list. Most of what's on a to-do list actually doesn't matter. There's some tools like a 411, something we use here at KW. It's one of the tools that Gary Keller's used a long time. The idea behind this is it's his yearly goals, monthly goals, weekly activities. That's what 411 stands for. 4 weeks, 1 month, 1 year. My favorite version of the 401, you can find it at theonething.com with the number 1 in the URL. And it just has 2 easy categories, business, personal. That's good for my brain. The one that has all these other categories, that's too much for my brain. Yeah, theonething.com, but the number 1 in the URL. So the number 1 thing at the, not the number sign. Why don't I just write it? That's so much more confusing. I did not go to Catholic school. If you can't tell by my pen, did you? TheOneThing.com. All right, cool. 80-20. Great, check your time. Awesome. What do you take away from this chapter? Again, we're doing the lightish version of some of these parts. I'll let you get the big concepts. What do you take away from the 80-20 principle?
Know what your big rocks
Know what those big rocks are. So you have time to lay on the beach. So you have time to golf. So you have time to do things that are important to you. That's actually where freedom lies, is in doing just the 20%. We're with Gary in Austin for that trip, and we had 3 hours scheduled with him. He gave us 4. And I don't know that he would have stopped. Like, it was clearly his schedule. So what he uses to manage his own schedule is he has a black book that is a month at a glance that he opens up. And he carries it around, like in his backpack. You ever see him cruising around with his backpack? That planner is in there. Why a month at a glance? Yeah. He can actually see a bigger spectrum of things that are important to him. And he said to us, because I respectfully poked fun at him when we were together and said, you own a tech company and you use a paper calendar. And then the recruit that was with me said, I use a paper calendar too. And then I remembered that I was the least paid person in the room. And funny story. So then when Gary said, the problem with your calendar using your phone is you only see a keyhole of what's possible. Using my month, I see everything. And it gives me better clarity. So for what it's worth, when he has his 20% items, he can actually see them on his calendar, and it gives him a lot of flexibility in the rest of his world. Okay, E to P. Moving from entrepreneurial to purposeful. This is a really big concept. E to P is all about, I'm at a certain level and I want to get somewhere else. So maybe I'll draw this out, because we got to make it easier. So this concept, sorry that half the room, but I think you'll still be able to see it. So I want you to imagine for a second, and I'm going to use this gentleman as an example. I'm going to leave his name out of it. His goal was 200 million. That was his goal in sales. Up until this point, his ceiling was 100 million. Now, right away you're thinking, that's a ridiculous ceiling. That's a lot of business. Totally agree. Natural ability, super high. This line represents his natural ability, his ceiling of achievement. The problem with having a high ceiling of achievement, he didn't want to do anything different to get to the next level. So in order to go from what we call E, or entrepreneurial, up to purposeful, you've got to actually break through this ceiling somehow. So you've got to go from your natural state to your unnatural state. I worked with an agent that his natural ceiling was down here. Really low natural ceiling. Judgment free. Really low natural ceiling. What was great about working with that individual is he knew right away that if he needed to break through that, he had to get to uncomfortable. So he actually exploded really fast. So this is one of the few areas of life which actually having a low natural ability is incredibly helpful. I had a friend that was in the Marines, And he shared with me he had never fired a firearm until he went to the Marine Corps. He became a sharpshooter. And they shared with him he had no bad habits, so he was easy to, he was down here as a shooter, so that when he took great advice and great coaching, he adapted really quickly. He didn't have to take all the bad habits and get them better. Does that make sense? So back to this example, the only way you get to purposeful is you have to, number one, identify your goal. You got to know what you want. Then you've got to know your strengths. I've talked about that already. Then you've got to actually figure out, okay, what is my 20%? We did that already. Now I've got to find what are my models to follow. So we kind of spoiled it already by using the example of if you want to do something, find somebody that's done it, and then model after them. Here's the key to this. You've got to be willing to do what they did. If not, it's not your model. Okay, I'm gonna say it again. You've got to be willing to do what they did, or else it's not your model. I have this amazing mentor in my life. His name's Dick Dillingham. And if you ever have the opportunity to go to one of Dick Dillingham's classes, do it. He's an incredible instructor and just an amazing human being. And I know Michelle stepped out, but she would attest to the same. And Dick shared with me so many lessons over the years about simplicity and about bringing things back. What he shared with me and what he became known for is working his database to get a lot of deals. So he had a class called How Your Mets Make You Millions. And it was all database, the whole thing. And he uses this example. I'm gonna make a mess, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Because why not? This is how you don't get invited back. And he said, imagine this is every way possible to lead generate for business. And you don't like to cold call. And you're not gonna knock on doors. You're not gonna host open houses. You don't care for networking. What else is there? Sphere of influence, okay? I don't really like people all that much. And the reality check, and this is the lesson from Dick, he said, this can still make you $1 million, but you better be really good at it and willing to do it. This is the 20%, by the way. I think it's a great visual of how to get to the 20%. You actually don't need all that other stuff to hit your goal. So back to the level of mastery, you've got to find a model in which you're willing to go all in. Then you install the systems. What systems? What systems? Support. Okay, keep going. I'll give you a trick. The systems of the model. So whatever model you're gonna follow, you're gonna install their systems. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, pertaining to this, like asking yourself these questions.
Yeah, to kind of bring it back full circle. You're gonna install the systems, which is time blocking, practicing, whatever those things are that are part of that model that'll get you success. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe like an SOP, like a standard operating procedure.
It could be. It could be a standard operating procedure. I would also go back to your goal. I want you to look at it again. Does anybody have a goal that hasn't ever been done before? It's okay if you do. Okay, cool. I had somebody in class, they said, I've got something that's never been done before. And the advice of that person was go find somebody else that's done something nobody else has ever done before. And follow that model. So I'm gonna encourage you to do whatever you wrote down, who has a model that you can talk to? That's willing to share, that's willing to give you what their systems are, what their models are in order to accomplish that goal. And then install their systems. Don't be creative. Back to my friend Dick Dillingham. He did 12 direct. One piece of mail to the same targeted group every single month. He's taught that for as long as I've known him. 12 direct, one piece of mail, same group, targeted group, every single month. And he said inevitably, somebody comes up to him a couple months later and says, I tried it, it didn't work. And he said, tell me what you did. Well, I sent out a mailing. Who'd you mail it to? Well, I mailed it to this group. Okay, how often did you do it? Well, I did it for a month. And then month 2, I missed it, but I did it month 3. And then month 4, I forgot. Month 5, I did it again. If you didn't install the systems, you didn't actually follow the model. You did your own. That's why it didn't work. It's not the model's fault, it's your fault. Don't blame the model. Okay, does that help? The key to this for me is it's gotta be a model that I'm willing to follow. There is a model out there that I could probably net $1 million a year. right now. In my current job, I could coach enough people in my world to net $1 million a year. I'm unwilling to work 20 hours a week. I'm sorry, 20 hours a day.
I'll say $20
But I'm not willing to work 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. So for me, that model wouldn't work. So I've got to find a model that would work. Does that help? Make sure you follow that. And then lastly, bring in accountability, which we're going to get to in a couple minutes.
So hold on.
Yep.
So you basically saying we interviewing for whoever going to be that model before us. Because if it don't fit, then it's cool to keep going to the next, to the next, to the next, as long as it
Sure.
what you trying to do.
Absolutely right. When I did that driving experience, every single instructor had a different line that they chose to drive around that racetrack. None of them were wrong. It was their line. They were all better than me, all of them, not even remotely comparable. I shouldn't even be allowed to be on the same racetrack as them. The reality is that they had a slightly different way to get to the same finish line. So you've just got to decide which model, which line are you going to stick with, and then stick with their line. Don't be creative here. Please, don't be creative at all. Now, interesting part, when you get to this level, and then you break through, you get a new ceiling of achievement. And all of this now becomes natural. That becomes your new natural ability. I hated public speaking, hated it. Terrified through college. If something was coming, I did not want to be that person presenting. Like sweaty palms, turn white as a ghost, even whiter than I already am. I didn't want to see people from the front of the room, like terrified of speaking. I had to find a model to break through that. Now I enjoy it, if you can't tell. I like it. I have fun with it, because I learn more up here than anybody else, which is really the greatest gift about teaching, is you learn more than everybody else. And I found a model. Well, that doesn't mean I don't have bad habits still. It doesn't mean at times I don't get nervous. I went as a guest, as I shared with you, to Mega Camp that year in 2010, in September 2010. Less than 12 months later, just coincidentally, timing-wise, I ended up being up on stage getting interviewed at Mega Camp. I was ridiculously nervous again. So I got to feel that thing again. But talk about full circle, from being a guest in the audience, not really knowing who Gary Taylor was at that point, to then being interviewed on stage by our president of the company that year. I don't even know what his role was then. Let's call him CEO, whoever that was who was in that role at that point. Amazing what can happen in 12 months as well. All right, E to P. Questions, concerns, comments. What do you think?
The one thing that really sticks out when we talk about, finding that mentor, those people that say, following the models. One of the things that I've learned by going out there and finding people that think bigger than me, that do a lot more, ton more business than me, they always go back to this follow the model. Follow the book, follow everything. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. And when I started switching that mindset, my business has taken off. And just following what those people are telling you what to do, because they're obviously doing it.
Yeah, it was in Dallas at Family Reunion that Gary said to a group of us, make peace with the boring focus of success. Somebody shared with me this morning, like early this morning, I had this text thread, and I want to read it, because it actually makes sense what we're talking about today. We crave stability, and we are bored easily in it. We crave stability, and we're easily bored in it. And they refer to that as a human paradox. So although we crave stability, we get easily bored. Is it just me that gets easily bored?
Yes.
Yes, that's what I thought. Just me. So that's the game we play. If we get easily bored and yet we crave stability, we're constantly in conflict with ourselves. So have a really boring business. When we were expecting our first, we were a bit nervous. Any of you have kids? You probably remember the first. You get a little nervous, or any of you around people when they had their first kid, they get
I don't
weird.
think nervous is the right word.
Yeah, nervous. Yeah, and
Shitless.
exactly. So one of the ways I built my sales business in Philadelphia without knowing anyone is I joined a soccer league. And I met somebody and they said, hey, my brother actually plays. I was looking for a league at that point to play with, so I joined that league. Wow. What I didn't know is that it was a bunch of professionals. Not like some ex-professional players, but also it was a bunch of like professionals in whatever they did. One of them was my friend Vincenzo. And I didn't know Vincenzo other than he wore a pager while he played soccer, and I thought that was weird because I knew he wasn't a drug dealer. And then I got to know him a little bit more, and wonderful human being, and I knew he was a doctor, I knew he was involved in medicine. So then it turns out he was head of prenatal medicine for Jefferson University. So he sees my wife. So he sees my wife and I sitting in that first appointment. For those of you that have ever been to that first appointment, it's a little awkward. You're sitting in a waiting room and you don't know why everybody else is there. And he sees me, he goes, Tim, come on, come back with me. Like, he just happened to be on the floor that day. And any of you have been to Jefferson University Hospital, it's massive. And coincidentally, he was working there that day. What's so interesting is when you're head of prenatal medicine and you walk into an office, it doesn't matter which one, everybody scatters that works there. So his primary job at that point was taking care of kids who were gonna have the biggest challenges before they were born. And then working through, like, amazing work that he's done over the years. Well, world-renowned doctor, and I just know him as Vincenzo that I play soccer with. And then sometimes he gives me an elbow. That's the guy I'm thinking of. So he takes us to his office and he sits us down and he says, hey, let me tell you the numbers. Let's just explain numbers. You're gonna hear some numbers say like 1 out of 1,000, like 1 out of 100, and they're gonna scare the stuff out of you. The reality is that's the best case scenario. These are good numbers. What we're hoping for and what we're going for is an incredibly boring pregnancy. That's our goal. Now, how did that make us feel? Still the same, but better. He simplified the whole process. He has a high level of mastery. Fast forward, our third bonus baby's on the way. I'm in Austin, Texas. I walk out of lunch and I've got missed calls and voicemails. And I didn't check them right away because that's just what you do when you're in Austin at an event. And I'm on the phone with my MCA at the time at my market center, and one of my partners walks up and he knocks the phone out of my hand. He's not normally that aggressive, verbally, but not physically. Knocks the phone and shoves his phone in my ear. What are you doing? And I just hear my wife saying, I'm driving to the hospital, my water broke. In Philadelphia traffic. We live in Downingtown on a Friday. I don't think you're gonna make it in time to try to get home. P.S. I made it in time. Because that's a fight you never should done. Everybody likes to say, it'll be fine. Oh, yeah, it would have been fine, all right. I got home in time. I walked into, like, time like slowed down. We had plenty of time. I made it with like 12 hours to spare. No big deal. Felt big at the time. And when I'm in that room, in the delivery room waiting, who walks in? Vincenzo. And every doctor and nurse scatters as quickly as they can. And Vincenzo stops and goes, no, I'm Tim's friend, it's fine. Like, everything's good, I'm just here to visit my friend and all good. Point of that is, that person, not only was he personally a friend, how much more connected is he now to my whole world? Now, I won't see him again in the delivery room, ever. And yet, the reality check to it is, who are you a Vincenzo for? Who would view you at that level? Because you wrote down something that seemed big and scary for you. I'm guessing there's somebody else in your world that what they wrote down that's big and scary for them, you've already mastered it. Who are you helping get their thing that's big and scary to them? Okay. Ahas from E to P. We're gonna make it by 5. Don't worry, I see the food and wine coming.
It's simple, not easy.
It is simple. Yeah, it can be simple. The journey can be difficult too, and there's bumps along the way, but enjoy the journey.
It's not easy.
It's rarely easy, but some things are.
I don't wanna quote the Sixers, but trust the process, like.
Yeah,
It's
they're not
so
very
true.
quotable. Yes.
It's so true though, trust like what every successful real estate agent has put out there, how they've grown their business.
Last part of E to P. Gary shared with us recently that more often than not, when he hit his ceiling of achievement, and he still does this all the time, he was missing a who. He was missing a person. And that person brought their models and systems to the table, which blew him past that so much faster. My opinion, and no one asked, but I'm gonna give it because I'm up front, you're not, that Gary is Gary Keller because he's absolutely mastered the ability to find, attract, bring into his world highly talented people and succeed through them.
100%.
And if you need evidence, look back at the 90s when the company almost failed. There have been other times it's almost failed too. I'm not saying it's perfect, but more often than not, he's one hire away from moving it forward again in a different direction. It's almost always been a who for him. And he'll tell you, his first admin still is in his world, very much so. I've heard other versions of that story from Kurt, but we'll leave that for another time. Okay, all right, move B to P. Step 4, making learning-based the foundation of your action plan. Okay, you're all here. You're here because on some level you're learning-based. There's a trick question I love to ask recruits in order for them to meet with me. And sorry, because I know there's a few of you that are guests here today. So I'm spoiling this probably for somebody that's going to be in your world at some point. The question to get them to meet with me, do you consider yourself learning-based? What's the answer?
Yes.
It's such a trick question. When I ask you if you consider yourself learning-based, you have to say yes. Because if you say no, you just failed that easiest IQ test in the world. I probably don't want to know you. But if you consider yourself learning-based, okay, great. Now I'm sure you'd agree as a learning-based person, you'd benefit from X, Y, Z. I've got you. Does that make sense? Learning-based? It's such a trick. Such a dirty trick, but it's okay. I mean it. I want to be around learning-based people. Well, learning-based people are actually individuals that have made a conscious decision to make learning part of their journey, part of their action plan, ultimately to develop their life. So don't stop learning. We use a tool that we call a growth plan. You may have heard that before. I'm going to give you a simple version. Each month, what are you doing professionally and personally to learn? One thing. What's one thing professionally, one thing personally? Hey, you're here right now. Which box did we just check?
Personal.
Okay? I mean, you heard from a luxury panel that probably checked at least part of your professional and personal, you're all here. So what are you reading? What are you watching? What class you're taking? Who are you taking to lunch? What are you looking to do in order to go to that next level? That's really what we're talking about. We're talking about a learning-based individual with a clear action plan. Knowing for knowing's sake versus knowing for doing's sake. We're not talking about trivia here. I don't care if you're great at Jeopardy. Good for you. That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about knowing for the purpose of moving forward and what your goal is. So here's the question. That goal you wrote down on page 13, or in your phone, or in your notebook. What class? What seminar? What training? What book? What podcast? What thing you need to learn, watch, do? Who do you need to talk to in order to make that more of a reality? Where's the gap in knowledge? Write it down. What's your gap? What do you not have an expertise in as in regard to that thing? And then what's the solution? There's 4 levels of competency. And I am going to hit on this for a second because it's in your materials. There will not be a course evaluation at the end of this because I did not follow the materials at all. So looking at the 4 levels of competency, it starts with unconscious incompetence. I don't know what I don't know. We all start there with everything. Then we get to conscious incompetence. Now I know what I don't know. Then I get up to conscious competence. Now I know that thing. Lastly is unconscious competence. Now I don't even think about it because it's just ingrained in me. Like I'm not making a conscious effort right now to walk. I got that. I'm good. I trip sometimes, but I'm still good. Overall, I understand it. I can make that happen. Driving. For the most part, I exist in unconscious competence. How many of you do the same? I saw some of you drive in this morning. You do the same thing. Did you ever get to a destination and not really fully remember how you got there?
Yes.
All right, I got here. That's muscle memory. That is unconscious competence. The problem is when you start out driving, so my 4-year-old now, she doesn't really understand driving all that much. She's starting to get pieces of it. That there's a wheel and that there's like gas, like she gets a little bit of it, but she doesn't really know what she doesn't know. At some point you get up to the point at which you start thinking, at least I did, I wonder what point you start pushing the brake to actually stop. I wonder what that other pedal does, that third one, because we had a car that had a clutch. I I wonder exactly how, and I started to realizing that there were some things I didn't know. Then I got to the point in which I kind of knew how to drive and I got it, but I still had to think about it very much. First day I had my license, I'm 17. Got my license in the morning. I had a 1985 Mercury Cougar. It was like the most obnoxious, awful, cream color, yellowy, mustard, terrible, but it was mine, and it was okay. So I had freedom for a moment. My parents reminded me that freedom can come and go, and yet they said, go ahead, you've earned the right, go for a drive. Started raining. What's significant about a 1985 Mercury Cougar?
Rear-wheel drive.
Rear-wheel drive, in the rain. When it first starts raining is actually the most dangerous time to be on the road because the oil comes up and you start to slide. Very first curve, the back of my car kicks out. Now, thankful, I was fully paying attention. I'm a brand new licensed driver, literally day one, and I remembered, okay, you turn into it, you don't hit the brakes, all was fine, life was good. But I had to be in that conscious competence. I had to really think about it. It took a little while before I got to unconscious competence. No bad story there. See, it ended fine. Car was fine, all was good. Okay, good.
I was thinking now, like the cars that we drive now, is like they don't even need to think anymore, really, than when we started driving, because we're about the same age. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking back, like I had a clutch, and like
Right.
you got to do a lot more thinking than you do
No, no, my
nowadays.
dad took me out, that was on a hill, driving, and he got out of the car and was like making people go backwards, and he made me go up the hill. He wasn't giving, I was like, I can just put the emergency brake on, you can get in. He's like, no, you're gonna get,
You figure it
up
out.
this hill.
You make it work.
Figure it out.
Oh, and then guess what? This starts all over again.
That's like a trauma movie. Like,
We took a trip to Ireland. What's significant about driving in Ireland?
Different side.
It is. And guess what? I didn't have enough, like, we were stretched. Again, you see stories of stretching and then contracting and stretching and contracting. We were doing it on a budget. Doing that trip on a budget. We'd just been married a year. So doing that trip on a budget, it happened to be when my wife was turning 30 that year that we were gonna be in Ireland. And the least expensive car at the time was a 4-speed. You wanna go back to what you don't know and knowing what you don't know? Get in the right side of the car and shift with your left hand. Now, interestingly enough, the gearbox still goes left to right, the clutch and they're all in the same place, but now you're thinking. So you quickly get back to, all right, I need to know what I know. Mastery and learning, they kind of happen around these two levels. You gotta know what you don't know, and you've gotta be willing to slow down in order to do that. It's really hard when you know something to remember that not everybody else knows what you know. Would you agree? Okay. How many of you have a significant other that's also in real estate? Great. For all the rest of us that don't, buy a house with your significant other and don't explain the process to them. How does that go?
Not well.
Not great. Not ideal. Because you just know it, especially if you've been in business for a while, it's muscle memory. Like buying a property, it's not that exciting after you do enough of them. It loses the emotional excitement. So often I talk to brand new agents like, I'm getting into real estate because I love houses. Like, that'll go away. Fact. So when you're buying a house, this is just good advice for all of you that have a significant other that's not in real estate. Go back to unconscious incompetence and realize this person doesn't know how the process works unless they buy real estate all the time. And then get to, all right, now we know together. Does that help? Give you perspective in that. The person that you're likely to go talk to that's gonna model for you and give you their systems and what they did to achieve what you want to achieve, they're probably operating in unconscious competence. They're gonna have to slow down in order to share that with you and have that willingness. And I realize we didn't break at all, so if you need to come and go, I probably should have said at the beginning, just do what you need to do. All right, KW curriculum, we've got a lot of it. I think this is one of the biggest challenges we experience as a company, just being honest. We have too much, arguably. And it's great. And yet, I don't want you to be a professional student. I was that senior in college that was taking 400 level classes in other majors my final 2 semesters, just for fun. Because I didn't want to go to the stupid gen ed classes, and I didn't take them all in the beginning. I started as a biochem pre-med major, and I switched to business my 4th year. So when I was doing my victory lap, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's the 5th year, when you're not a master's degree. The victory lap that I was doing, I was just plugging into whatever classes were exciting to me. That's not real purposeful. And the reality is, I just didn't want to go to a bunch of the freshman classes. Been there. I'm already on my victory lap. I want to see the others in their victory lap too. So I got to experience a lot of cool things. Now, that's not to say don't do those things and don't go experience something new. Just don't do that first. So if there's a class coming up that's not in alignment with your goal at all, I'm actually going to say something that may be opposite what you're thinking. Don't go to it. I want you to look back at your goal. Page 13, you wrote it down. You probably remember it by now, I hope. See some repetition here? And I want you to think about that goal that you had. What class do you have scheduled in the next 30 days that's going to help you get there? What podcast are you listening to in the next 7 days that's going to help you get there? What good advice are you getting that's going to help you get there? There's lots. There's coaching. Hey, I mentioned I'm a coach. If any of you want to know more about coaching, talk to me after. I'll be here for the happy hour too. I can see a distinct time in my life when I partnered with a coach that life changed rapidly in a good way. And I still have the same coach today. All right. AHAs. Learning-based foundation of your action plan. What's it costing you by not attending Mega Camp in 30 days? To give you perspective, you're likely to be 6 months behind by not attending. How do I know that? I'll give you another cheat that's even easier. Every 6 months we get a market update from our team at Founder Unit or at Mega Camp. So I know that if I have to wait another 6 months, I'm at a minimum 6 months behind. So I would encourage every single person in here, either go in person or attend digitally. Just do it. It will be money well spent, it'll be time well spent. You can't help but learn something from, if nothing else, Gary's vision speech and like a market update. What's happening in the market right now?
Shift.
Okay, is it getting better or worse?
Depends on your perspective.
Yeah, trick question. Thank you guys for being really smart. For really skilled people and those willing to build skill, it's going to be better than it's ever been. Because skill matters in a shifting market. So if you're willing to build skill and you're willing to be skilled, you're at the best times you've ever had. It will weed out those that are unwilling to build skill. I had a call with a leader that I coach in California, and he shared with me that one of his agents said, "I can't believe it. I had to go put a for sale sign in a yard." He said, "Were you not doing that before?" And the guy said, "No, I've been using for sale signs in years. We haven't needed them. They sell in 30 seconds." And the leader kind of put out to me and said, "Did you deliver on what you agreed to with the seller then? Did you tell the seller you're gonna put a for sale sign?" I don't know. Skill matters. I'd start dusting off your marketing plan. You're gonna need it. You need a marketing plan to actually market properties. Okay.
It's like, well, I mean, it's totally like home inspections. There's a lot of agents who are, and I'm only 3 years in the business, so I'm still very new, that don't know what to do when it comes around negotiating home inspections. Turn it in 3 days after that period's over. Well, guess what? Your buyer's not getting anything.
Right, because those timelines didn't matter.
Yeah.
It was like everything was waived for a while.
Yeah.
It was the Wild West of real
So
estate.
that's been one thing I've seen a lot lately.
Yeah, managing your schedule, managing your timeline, yeah, really matters. Oh, and guess what? People now actually want to see more than one house. Are you experiencing that? I mean, wait, the buyer saw more than one house? They weren't happy with the very first one? Was there a market in which they saw one and bought that one?
Yep.
So they had options for.
Now they want to see it a second time.
Second time, sometimes a third time. All right, the market changed. So there's a book called Who Moved My Cheese? Cheese moved. Are you gonna move? So you'll get to decide. I'm gonna pivot for a second and give you a couple book recommendations. This is one. Making Numbers Count by Chip Heath. Anyone read it? Put it on your reading list. Making Numbers Count by Chip Heath.
One of my questions at the end of this session, for sure.
I got a bunch of them for you. We're gonna start with that one for now. Here's the point of that book. Do you remember last summer that there was a giant ship stuck in the Panama Canal? How big was that?
Huge.
Okay. I mean, how big? Okay. Keep going. Close.
10.
Do any of us really remember? I think that's the point. None of us really remember. How about this? If I told you that that ship was the same length as the Empire State Building laying on its side. Okay, which one gave you better perspective? Yeah, so the point is, our brains are actually not capable of processing numbers all that well in a visual sense. We're visual people. We can see things like that we compare to. So, by the way, I think you're close with 5 football fields. It's like 300 yards, I think, or something like, I don't know, I think, whatever it is. It's the Empire State Building laying on its side. I won't forget that. I'll forget the exact number of feet. So the point of this book is, language of real estate, numbers of real estate, that's awesome, we need to know that. But if we give it out in that fashion, nobody cares. Your number one job as an agent, I'm just gonna give it to you. Your number one job as an agent is to beat the market. It's to list properties and sell them faster than the market sells them. And after you do that, then you tell your story. That's the number 2 job. So your number 2 job is, I need to tell my story about how much better I am than the average property on the market. So what's our average days on the market right now in Wilmington? 37, cool. So my goal as a listing agent in this market would be to sell it faster than 37 days. And then I tell that story. Now, I'd probably tell it a different way. If my average days is 7, and the market average is 37, that means I save my customers an extra mortgage payment by working with me. Part 2, if possible, this one's a little bit harder, is to sell higher than average price. That's less in your control. If you can do both, then I've got a double story to tell. So the market averages selling 95% to list. My average is 104% to list. Who do you want to list with? Somebody that sells higher than the market or somebody that sells lower than the market?
Higher.
Now, of course. Now my story is doing all the heavy lifting for me. Here's the maybe you didn't think about this or connect this dot. I didn't when I first heard it. It prevents you from taking overpriced listings. Because if you take an overpriced listings, what happens to your average days in the market? It gets screwed up. It also makes your percentage go down because you're probably going to sell that less than list price for it's actually worth. So Gary shared that with us, I don't know, a year ago, and I thought, wow, I never thought about it in such simplicity. My only job is to beat the market and tell my story. That's it, as a listing agent. That simple. So the reason I can't take your overpriced listing is because I don't want to screw up my numbers. Because I sell houses faster than the market, and you're telling me you want to sell slower than the market. That's not actually my goal. And it's not your goal either. Maybe. Or be second for the listing. There will be a time soon that you're going to be second for the listing. Meaning that it expired with the first agent and you get to relist it. I know it's hard to believe those days will be back. They will. They always happen. All right, remove your limiting beliefs. So what limiting beliefs do you have around whatever you wrote down as your goal? Can I give you mine?
Yep.
So I shared with you, I'm a coach. What does a MAPS coach cost per month?
$1,000.
Mastery level, $1,000 a month. Last year I raised my prices. Being honest. So I charge clients $1,500 a month to coach. My self-talk at that point was, I'm not worth it. Being really transparent with this group, I'm not worth that. Nobody's willing to pay me that. Why would they pay 50% more to work with me? That was a limiting belief. What helped me unlock that? Again, I'm being ridiculously transparent with all of you. There are coaches that charge more and do not as good of a job. They don't have the results. So I had to look back at my results and let my results tell the story to me. I wake up every day and I don't look in the mirror and say, I got this figured out. My self-talk is I look in the mirror and say, I don't have this figured out, but I have hope inside of me that I can figure it out. I know that I'm willing to do the work. So I've got some messed up things in my head, I get that. And you're getting to hear a lot of that today. But the point is, I'm dissatisfied with the way things are today, but I have clarity on where I want them to go. So a way to remove limiting beliefs is ask a question, what's great about that? My last opportunity as team leader was an hour away from my house. I live in Downingtown. It was in Doylestown. And some of you may know where those two cities are.
Yeah.
How do you get to those two destinations from one to the other?
Is that Route 1?
Thankfully, no. Well, you got part of 202 at one point.
Back road?
The Pennsylvania Turnpike. How's that thing?
I hate that.
How's that? Always under construction. Safe answer. Under construction. So I'll be very, again, transparency. I hope you're okay with because you're getting it today. It was really hard to say I'm going to commute an hour to an hour and 10 minutes each way every single day for an extended period of time. How many hours is that a week?
10 hours.
About 10. Another way to look at that, that's one day a week. One work day. Okay, let's just play real days. Every 2 weeks, it's one full day of my life I'm in the car. Uh-oh, I see where this is going. That's 26 days a year I'm in the car. That's a vacation month a year that I'm commuting. Now, how easy was it for us to go down the dark path of all the negativity? Okay, what was great about it? So thankfully I had a coach in my world reframed it and said, what's great about that commute?
Books on tape.
Tons of books, tons of Audible, tons of podcasts,
Decompression.
tons of I could listen to a book a week easily. Sometimes I listen to a book a day. Turn it up to 2 times speed. Your brain will process that, by the way. If you're not already doing that, and if nothing else takes your time today, turn it up to as fast as you possibly can, and then turn it back down. So for like 30 seconds, as fast as it'll go on whatever device you're using. Then turn it back down to like 2, maybe 1.8 times speed, and your brain will have no problem understanding all of it.
That's
I don't
okay.
care. It's your market center. You say whatever you want.
I've
So
said a lot worse than you.
that's okay.
I'm allowed to be on video saying it.
You're great. So why I want to share that with you is that was a secret that unlocked speed to get more knowledge faster. It actually sped up my journey so much faster than I realized. It also made it a really easy decision when it was time for me to end that part of that chapter of my world to be able to say, okay, I'm good. Because what I didn't know, when I started the commute, it was in January. And it wasn't a snowy day. What does snow do to the the Pennsylvania Turnpike?
Shuts it down.
It makes it fun. And then we opened a business center. And the business center was in New Hope. Apparently I didn't know a map. New Hope is another 25 minutes past the wrong direction. So now I'm commuting an hour and a half on days that I need to do that. Again, what's great about it? Okay, just get more time back. Now what's interesting is now that I full-time work from home, I put pants on for all of you today. You're welcome. Yes, many thank yous, probably. So what's great about working from home is the commute time is non-existent. What's challenging? The commute time is non-existent. So looking at all those opportunities of what you have in your world. How many of you have a 10-minute or less commute to the market center? Okay, 5 minutes or less? Do you even live in this building? Okay, 2 minutes? 3 minutes? Okay, 10 minutes a day. If you can find 10 minutes a day to listen to a book, you'll get through books quite quickly. Whatever they are, if you're listening to it in Audible. Now, I still prefer paper books personally, but sometimes I'll do both. I'll listen and read at the same time. All right, remove your limiting beliefs. What are the lies you've been telling yourself that are holding you back? I'm not even gonna have you write it down because I don't want your brain to see the lie you're gonna write down. There is an exercise, or there was an exercise at one point in this class where you wrote it down and you set it on fire. Michelle said we're not allowed to do that.
Michelle.
There's another exercise. Any of you been a coaching?
Where's the spicy Michelle?
I'll give you alcohol afterwards. Spicy Michelle might come out.
Fine.
Can we go into the parking lot and light stuff on fire?
Who's been a coaching skills camp?
Never heard of it.
Okay, so coaching skills camp is a thing that, at least at the time, they had us break boards. They had us like write all of our negativity on a board and literally punch through the board. It's a pretty cool experience, I'm not gonna lie. Going through that exercise. I don't know if they still do it now or not. I can't imagine the liability with that. But just kind of going through it, and it was amazing because I was a coach at the time I took it, and I had coaching clients in the room, and to watch them literally break through their limiting beliefs, amazing things happen. What we don't talk about, what we're going to today, new ones show up. So that self-talk of, I don't know that I deserve that, it took me comparing myself to somebody else that I didn't believe as good. I know this is a weird place to go, but I had to justify that. So whatever that thing is you wrote down, who's not as talented as you that's already doing it?
That's real.
They exist.
That's real.
Yep. There was an agent in our marketplace when I sold in Philadelphia that if you didn't get her by noon, you couldn't talk to her. Yep. She was at the bar at 12:05 every day for the remainder of her life. That's how she existed. She listed multi-million-dollar houses all around Rittenhouse Square all the time for years. I'm not speaking badly of her. That was her life choice. She had her demons she was dealing with. Yet the reality check, if she can do that, why can't I? What's my excuse? So the question is often, what are they doing that I'm unwilling to do or been unwilling to do up to this point?
I'm willing to surrender to you.
Great. I knew you would. Something that told me that you're willing to do that. Right. Now, here's the downside of the limiting belief part. The longer you hold on to it, the harder it is to remove. It doesn't get easier. Get rid of it as quickly as you can. All right, let's do an example. I want everybody to raise your right hand as high as you can. Okay, raise it a little higher. Huh, what happened? You put your hands down.
It went a little higher.
Why did it go higher? I told you to raise as high as you could.
Because you stretched.
Okay, great. So you still had more to go. What was the self-talk that caused you not to raise it as high as you could the first time?
This is good enough.
Yeah. I'm guilty too. I do the exact same thing. It's comfortable. So you stopped at comfort, even though the directions were as high as you could. Now, I saw this gentleman over here stand up. So you did get it really high. Going up. Really had your hand high as going. But the reality check is, some level, that limiting belief is in us. Get rid of it as quickly as possible. The self-talk that held me back and still holds me back at time is, I don't deserve this. And then what I need to reframe that is, if I don't, who does? Why not me? Okay, limiting beliefs. Get rid of them. When's a time in your life in which you had one that you successfully got rid of? Does anybody remember back to when you had one that you had to overcome?
Oh, you want to answer to that?
Sure, go for it, Tiffany.
Oh, goodness.
If you want to, you don't have to.
So, years ago, when I was in my 20s, I didn't have a lot of self-worth, and I dated a person who was extremely abusive mentally and physically, and I just didn't have the confidence in myself. I didn't believe in myself. I didn't believe in my brain ability, my looks, my integrity. Like, I didn't believe in anything, and I allowed that to tear apart the rest of my world. And I spoke to a coach, and I was able to break through. And now I value myself more than anything else.
Thank you for being able to share that. And that's one of the times that it's not your fault. Clearly, it's not your fault. The abuse is never your own fault. Definitely somebody else's. So thank you for being the willingness to share that. And I think that's a great example of self-talk that shows up, that when we get rid of it, it actually releases us to do something different. Here's an example of a book. It's called The Innovation Stack. Anyone read this one? Cool, you're getting new books today. The Innovation Stack. It was written by the gentleman that invented the square reader that plugs into a phone. Remember that little device? Still exists, square reader. It's become a little bit bigger than that. Here's what jumped out at me in this book. He invented something that never existed before. And what he really invented was a way in which small businesses could process credit card payments. Because until that device existed, no credit card companies would ever want to work with a small business. Now, anybody been to a food truck?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like every food truck I've ever been to in the last 5 years has a square reader or some version of that I scan or swipe. Every coffee shop has them now. They're all over the place. They developed this. Now, he also tells a story in this book about how Amazon came after them and had a competing device with a much bigger budget. But what they ultimately built was an innovation stack, which is solve the first problem, new problem shows up, solve that, new problem shows up, we're gonna solve that, and it prevents people from being able to copy you, ultimately. So I think it's an awesome read. Last part of this book that applies to limiting beliefs and where I was going with it, early on, he hired an intern. He hired, I think the guy was 16 or 17 at the time. The intern's name was Jack Dorsey. Who's Jack Dorsey? Founded Twitter. So my limiting belief is I can't find talent. Well, you understand, I can't find a talented person enough. This guy found Jack Dorsey as a 16, 17-year-old, had him an intern. Now, interesting in the book, it was not long before Jack was running a big department as an intern of his company that was aspiring and growing. Okay, thoughts around limiting beliefs? We all have them. Suck it up. Get rid of them.
Pretty much.
The only solution is to get rid of them or to settle. If not you, then who? Okay, be accountable. Last step. What have we covered so far?
Everything.
How do your brains feel?
Good.
Okay. Yeah, there's a little of both. All right, so let's talk about accountability. First of all, what did you hear when you heard the word accountability? What was that first self-talk? Go ahead.
I just thought, I wrote that on my to-do list for my goal.
Awesome.
Accountable.
Cool. Did anybody have any negative self-talk with the word accountability? Yeah, thank you, Jim. I do too, still. Like accountability, it feels, I don't want to be held accountable. I remember when I was held accountable as a kid. That meant I was in trouble or at work. I did something stupid, usually, that resulted in me being held accountable. So I want you to reframe this perhaps, and this may help somebody in the room. Who's holding you able?
Like that.
Does that help? Okay, who's holding you able to what you want? Are you a victim or are you accountable? Okay, spoiler, life happens. Sorry if you didn't know that already. I was in Austin I guess it was February 1st when I heard this. February 1st, 2020. And Jeannie Osnes, who's an awesome MAPS coach and a wonderful human, she said something at MAPS Models that is burned into my brain, and she said, life doesn't send you a save the date. Life does not send you a save the date. Why do I remember that I was in that room February 1st of 2020?
It was my birthday.
That's why. That's exactly. I was celebrating Rod's birthday. Why else?
Something monumental was going on in your life.
Well, things going on in your life too.
COVID.
We didn't know about it yet.
Yeah.
We were 6 weeks away from the whole world shutting down. Nobody sent me a save the date. I was on one of the last flights out of Houston, March 8th, 2020. I knew it was one of the last flights because I hadn't been flying all that much that year, and I got upgraded immediately to first class, and there were only 6 people, and there were 15 seats. Like, uh-oh, something's going on here. Anybody live in Pennsylvania? What did they do right before St. Patty's Day of 2020 in Pennsylvania?
Shut down everything.
There's one store that jumps out of my mind the most. They closed the day before St. Patty's Day. PA, Wine and Spirits.
Yeah.
That was a, oh no, bad things are happening now. St. Patty's Day is tomorrow, what are we gonna do? The liquor stores are closed for like indefinitely. And I heard stories of people getting pulled over at the Delaware border for transporting back and forth from Total Wines.
They were sitting there.
Yeah.
Right on Avon's Road.
Oh, I heard the stories.
Yeah.
Total Wines.
Right, because Total Wines. I've made that commute. Sure I have. I saved some of that. So the point is, life happens. How do you show up after? The length of time you decide to stay on the left side of this in the victimhood will ultimately determine what happens next. So being a victim, you don't seek reality, you fight, you blame, personal excuses, waiting and hoping. Finally, we're all guilty of showing up here at some point. Get out of it as quickly as possible. The quicker you get to seeking reality, acknowledging, owning, finding solutions, and getting on with it, the faster you get past that part. It's not easy, and yet it's necessary. Don't raise your hand, but I just want you to think, who's that professional victim that's in your world? It's probably a family member. Hopefully it's extended family, but it's a family member. I've got one. I'm gonna leave a lot of the details out because we're doing this on YouTube, I think. However, back to Houston. Somehow I keep having a challenge going to Houston. I'm in Houston this year, back in April, right before Run to Mega Leadership. I'm in Houston, and I wake up at 3 in the morning for some weird reason. You ever have that? You just like wake up and, I don't know, something said look at my phone. And I had a bunch of SOS messages. Fun fact, you squeeze that button too many times, that emergency thing on your phone, and you do it, it alerts everybody as your emergency contacts with your exact PIN location. And it was from somebody, one of my family members, and it was home, emergency room, with a drop PIN. And a voicemail from another family member. Call me when you can. Now, in my world, my family doesn't leave voicemails at 2 and 3 in the morning and say, call me. So it was somebody in our family that's a professional victim going through a big challenge in their world. And at that moment, in a padded room at the ER for taking things they shouldn't have been consuming, and far too many of them, and an ambulance and all those kind of things that go with that. You see where the pattern's going. Professional victim stays there. It's everybody else's fault, not my own. So the question that I like to ask is, do you light up the room when you walk in or when you walk out? How are you spending time with people that let the room when they walk in or when they walk out? I taught you. So again, you've seen the pattern with Houston. I literally taught this class that morning and I gave them the full story. They got all the details and exactly what I experienced because I was awake. When you get that phone call at 3 in the morning, you're awake. Spoiler, you're awake for the day. No matter what, you're up. And then it was a journey of what's next. How do we put this person through rehab? How much is that going to cost? By the way, if you don't know this, and I hope none of you ever experience it, rehab costs $800 per day for 30 days. And most people that go to rehab, unfortunately, end up back there. I know this because the person that was there shared with me how many people they met while they were there that were multiple trips. Do that. It's terrible. Horrible thing. Victims. So are you a victim or are you accountable? Please choose to be accountable. Please choose to get out of victimhood as quickly as you can. All right, if I was hiring somebody from our organization, who do I want to hire? All right, I know it's easy to say. Thank you. Really easy to say, much harder to do. What are some signs that somebody might be a victim? It's almost, that's probably the number one thing I hear. Somebody else's fault. They almost never own any piece of anything they do. So I coach a big agent in Florida, and she has an admin that's a professional victim. Problem, it's also her niece. Now, what does this agent want to do? Well, I wish. She wants to help her. What I had to share with her, and we're going to make progress, I hope. We're not that good to help everybody. We can only help people that want to be helped. We're not professional people that can help people. I'm sorry to spoil anybody, unless somebody in here is a professional that can't help people that don't want to be helped. We got to ask Gary Keller this question several months ago. Gary, how do you help an agent that doesn't want to make changes? It doesn't want to change. He said, if you figure that out, you'd be in my seat. And any seat you wanted, because I haven't figured it out yet. You have to be willing to. So if I was going to choose, don't make exceptions. People you choose time with, spend time with, be a victim. That person, that face that showed up in all of your heads, if they're not a family member, stop spending time with them. If they are, it's hard. Boundaries, yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. Want to be humbled as a coach that I get to be this professional coach with all these great people and pretend at times I feel like I'm still playing dress up. Again, being transparent, and I can't help that person. Can't help that family member. Why not? They don't want to be helped. They don't want to be helped. Can't help people that don't want to be helped. You can't sell real estate with a seller that doesn't want to sell. Doesn't work. Won't work. Okay. So I want you to go to that list again. Your thing you wrote down. Who's holding you able to hitting that goal? You put your time slot. You got it down when you're gonna spend the first 30 minutes on it next week. You've got your time slot for when you're gonna answer that first question in the next week. Your 30-minute time slot. Who are you gonna tell today to hold you accountable to that? Cool. How many of you have a coach, by the way? Just out of curiosity. Great. That would be a good person to tell. Hey, my coach knows way too much about my personal life, and yet he still chooses to work with me. Bizarre. I can't even understand why he would choose to work with me still. By the way, it's choice. So for those of you that have a coach, I want you to know it's a choice by your coach to choose to work with you too. So it's a partnership. It really is. This was incredibly evident. I'm flying home from Houston in 2021. I shared with you my grandfather passed that morning. I'm on a coaching call in the airport with a client who pays me $1,500 a month to coach with me. Now, by the way, bad coach, number one, being at the airport. But I didn't have a choice. I had to get home for a funeral. I needed to move my schedule around. And right away he said to me, "What's going on?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "I hear something different in your voice." And I shared with him what happened. He said, "Why are you talking to me? Let's talk later." Now, what does that tell me?
He cares.
He's a partner. That's partnership. So we hear about it, we talk about it, but I up to that point I had this limiting belief that if he's my client, yeah, we call it partners, but it's one-way partnership. BS. It's not. It's a two-way partnership. So he showed me he cares about me a lot too. What do you think that did for our partnership? It's stronger. Stronger than ever. I got home, there were flowers in my house. First time I've ever had a gentleman send me flowers.
Partners.
Kind of nice. No one else has sent me flowers. Kind of nice. It was like, and it was from another client. He had heard that I had to move my call. He had heard, found my address, sent flowers. Partnership. Partnership's important. Really, really important. Okay. Who are the people in your box? Who's your financial, your spiritual, your physical, and your business mentor / coach? Who's that person? If you want to get to page 91 in your materials, that's where it is. 93 is where you can fill it out. 91 just got references. When you get to 93, it's actually filling it out. So who are the people in your world? I want you just to take a moment and write down those 4 words: financial, spiritual, physical, and business. Or if you already have them written, if you've got materials, you can do it that way. So if you already have somebody, write it in that circle. I've got somebody in my financial world. I've got somebody in my business world. I'm being, again, transparent. I don't have somebody in my spiritual world, I don't have somebody in my physical world. I'm going to cheat a little bit and say I've got Peloton in my physical world. Because there's some great coaching in Peloton, honestly. Great moments of coaching. Okay, so here's what I want you to identify. By when, thank you. By when are you going to partner with somebody in that circle that's missing? Which one of those 4 has the most alignment with what your goal is that you wrote down? And that add by is by when are you going to add that person to your world? So if you're missing all 4 and you think you need all 4, great. Don't put you're going to add them all at the same time. Pick one.
So really, you don't, I'm glad you brought that up, because the first time I went through this, the first time, like you see that screen, you're like, God, I don't have anybody for all 4, and then I can like, crap, like mine. But you obviously just stayed in front of all of us, which you don't want.
I want somebody on 4. Yeah.
So that makes me feel a lot better about that spot.
Pick one. Because if you pick all 4, it's too many.
Yeah. Like I have a financial and a business side of things.
Great.
But definitely not anybody spiritual.
And you may want to look back to your goal, and I know your goal because you shared it with all of us publicly. Who's going to help you get there? So who's that accountability person that's going to help you on that journey to buy your beach house? Probably financial. Maybe business. Maybe both. So it's looking at it from that lens, and then who would I need to add next? I have a coaching client, and again, leaving names out of all of this, so I hope you don't mind that I'm just saying client. For obvious reasons, I respect the confidentiality. And he and his wife just came into a significant amount of money, like just below 7 figures that they just came into as a sort of inheritance, sort of selling some real estate. Long story short, they went from not 7 figures in their bank account to 7 figures in their bank account, literally overnight. Now, he is an incredible human being. And he's looking at what are the best ways in which we can be good stewards of this money. He's really strong religious beliefs and really strong faith, and he believes that he was blessed with this, he needs to be a good steward of this. And I think he's an amazing human for even thinking that way, let alone taking action. And he's between 2 things. One is a property in location A, the other is a property in location B. And what we did literally yesterday, it happened this week. Yesterday we went through the 7 circles on page 114 of the One Thing, where it goes through spiritual life, my business life, my key relationships, my financial life, my job. And we look at each one of those as a lens of, okay, does that property in location A impact that? Okay, does it impact that? And we went through all 7 of them. Location A, all 7 of them were impacted by that one purchase. Location B, 3 of the 7 were impacted by that. Which one do you think is gonna make a decision on? Clarity. It's just clarity around what's important to him and what's most important to him. Does that help? More perspective. All right. So you've got your people in the box. You know who you need to add. If you're in an accountability partnership with somebody else, like another human being in this room, here's the model. This is straight from MREA, right from the Red Book. What was your goal? How'd you do? How do you feel about it? Based on how you did, what will you do next? Is there anything that might keep you from doing that? Is there any training or support that you might need? The question I see gets skipped most often. How do you feel about that? And here's where I see it get skipped. What was your goal? 10 listings this month. How did you do? 12 listings this month. Great, have a nice day. What did I miss? Yeah, because maybe my family didn't see me for that month and I don't feel good. That question is incredibly important. How do I feel about that? Gary defined success for us on a call recently. And he said success to him is the achievement of a predetermined goal and feeling good about it. That feeling part sometimes gets left out. So for him, it's the achievement of a predetermined goal and the feeling good about that achievement. We're skipping that. Ahas from being accountable. We're gonna put a bell on this thing, and I told you you're gonna hit that by 5. You didn't believe me. Ahas from being accountable. Or being held equal. All at once. Shout them out.
If you want to move forward, you need to have an accountability partner. You need to be uncomfortable in order to break through.
What's the quote? If you want to move faster, move for somebody else. Something like that. Okay, one more aha from accountability before we put all this together, and I'm going to give you 2 more book recommendations.
You can have it as a holistic approach, but not every box has to be checked off. The ones that are most pertinent to you are the ones that need to be held able to.
Sure. And definitely in that order. So if it's in most in alignment with what's next for you, then that's what you need to bring into your world. Just get extreme clarity around it. What we looked at today is first, what are you good at naturally? What's that? What are you a master of or on a journey to mastery towards? Then what are the 20% of the big rocks I need to achieve in order to make that a reality? By the way, all of this started with you identifying what is your big someday goal that you're going to lay out a clear plan for, and I think you've got a pretty good start to that plan today. Number 3, went in for what are those model systems, people that are going to take me from entrepreneurial to purposeful. Then we got into the learning base. What do I need to know that I don't currently know, or what do I need to strengthen that I may already know? Number 5, we got into removing those limiting beliefs or those lies you've been holding on to that keep showing up over and over again. And then lastly, who's holding you able to this? All right, 2 more book recommendations. We're gonna get 3 ahas, and we're gonna be done like, I don't know, 4 minutes early, if my math is right. Pretty close. All right, first one, Die with Zero. This isn't for everyone. However, if legacy is something that's important to you, I would consider Die with Zero. It's a morbid title, I get it. Premise of this book is that really accomplish what you want to accomplish now and buy insurance for things you're worried about. Those are really short version of the book. So if you're delaying things because you need to have reserves for the next 6 months, a very famous person named Ray Dalio recently said, cash is trash. How do you feel about that statement? Cash is trash. And then he added a line, during inflationary times. So let's just think about it. How much is inflation up? Last month? 8 or 9%. That means at the beginning of June, if you had $1 million in the bank, it's still there on paper, but your spending power decreased by 8%. That's what he means by cash is trash. That if you don't do anything with it, you don't invest it, it actually goes down in its buying ability. So think back, if you put it in a non-interest bearing account, which let's be honest, you're not getting interest today anyway, on anything you put it in the bank. But if you had a non-interest bearing account when you were 5 years old and you had $1,000 in it, how much do you have now?
$1,000.
Still $1,000. You didn't touch it. Still $1,000. Has its buying power gone up or down? Since you were 5 years old, it's gone down significantly. So that's the cash is trash principle. Second book. If you're thinking about expanding or building a team, hiring somebody to your organization, please read No Rules by Reed Hastings, the founder of Netflix. Takes a lot of organizational ideas and turns them on its head. And you may be saying, well, why would I want to turn organizational rules on its head? Netflix consistently has been one of the most desirable companies for people to work in that are in technology. There's a waiting list. Spoiler, they don't have a dress code. And according to Reed, no one's ever come in naked.
Really?
Shocking. Second spoiler, they overpay their employees. Overpay. They overpay, they overcharge maybe too. But they overpay their employees. They pay them more than market value. They encourage their employees to go on interviews and get better deals, and they'll match it and beat it.
That's awesome.
That's how you dominate talent. Now you're dominating your talent pool. You're making sure that you're getting really talented people. All right. All right, we're only down to 3 minutes. So in our last 3 minutes, so we're not gonna take the entire 3 minutes, I don't think. Couple ahas. What'd you take away from this time today?
Life doesn't send you a save date.
It doesn't. Yeah. Jeannie's, she's so smart. It really doesn't. And she experienced it, we all experience it. Okay, what else?
Focus on
Clarity on what's important.
Clarity on what's important. Okay, go ahead. I
I
heard
say
you.
focus on your one thing.
Focus on what's important to you. The one thing. What else?
How do you show up afterwards?
How do you show up afterwards? After life happens. Yeah, that matters. One more.
Yeah, I like the 80-20 and the 20%. Versus 80%. That resonates.
Yeah. I mean, you could theorize that if you work an 8-hour day, only 2 of those hours are actually moving you at all. You're wasting the other 6. Or the other 6 just don't have as big of an impact. So when you start looking at your business from that lens, what would you do if you only had 2 hours today to do it? You'd probably still hit your goals. Okay, how'd we do? Did you get what you needed? Yeah. All those things we outlined? Cool. Thank you for hanging out. These notes a lot. Thank you. Love gifts. It'll be enjoyed. Because it came in the size of a container that I think I know what lives
Well, don't get excited
earlier
about
you
the
said you
paper
don't-
that I used, because it was the bottle that, the bottle came in that bag, if I didn't have paper, so I got.
I'm
Recycle, reuse.
very